Chapter 1223. Boom! A shocking explosion could be heard all of a sudden. The entire ground had been reduced to ruins. A huge pit appeared, and a blood-red longsword was stabbed into the deep pit, swaying in the pit. Around the blood sword, there were wisps of ice-cold blood energy drifting. The great judge's blood-colored robe fluttered as he landed beside the sword, his face as cold as a 10,000-year-old iceberg. I can't believe I let that young man escape. A teleportation array? With a clang, the sword was pulled out, and the ground caved in. He took a deep breath and exhaled the depression in his heart. The fact that a half-step saint could kill 4 of his judges showed that he was extraordinary. He had no choice but to swallow this loss. Of course, he couldn't let it go for nothing. A young man from the Heaven Chief realm, the great judge narrowed his eyes. Since he dared to choose this time to rebel against Nether Prison, he naturally had information from many sources. As a great world that once sat on the same level as Nether Prison, the Heaven Chief realm was naturally not weak. However, Heaven Chief realm was in decline now and was almost annexed by Nether Prison. If it weren't for the recovery of the Heaven Tree, the whole Heaven Chief realm would probably end up no better than the Abyss. Now that Nether Prison was facing internal and external troubles, it probably wouldn't attack the Heaven Chief realm. It would probably start to unite with the Heaven Chief realm. After all, Nether Prison had the 9 Revolution Nether Chef's clan, which was said to originate from the Heaven Chief realm. Now that the Abyss was independent of Nether Prison, it would inevitably have to deal with the surrounding worlds. At that time, it would inevitably come into contact with the Heaven Chief realm. He had plenty of time to deal with this young man in the future. As the great judge of the law enforcement team, how could he be willing to suffer such a big loss? The familiar dizziness made Bufong a little dazed. It was the same feeling he had when he traveled around in the teleportation array. Now, he felt the dizziness of the teleportation array again. It made him a little nostalgic. The teleportation array sent them directly back to the Heaven Chief realm, which saved him the trouble of going to the Abyss. Yu and Mengqi grabbed the sleeves of Bufong's vermilion robe. Both of them were a little scared. The great judge's terrifying killing intent made them tense up. That terrifying aura seemed to be able to destroy the world. Is that the aura of a great sage? Bufong did not know how much time had passed, but he felt as if his face was about to be stretched. Finally, the feeling of his feet stepping on the ground brought Bufong back to his senses. He opened his eyes. The dazzling sunlight suddenly shone down, and the comfortable feeling of warmth made Bufong involuntarily feel a little warm. Unlike the chilliness of the Abyss, this warmth enveloped Bufong's body, making all the blood in his body become active. A gust of wind blew over, bringing with it a bit of warmth. Yu and Mengqi opened their eyes and looked around curiously. It's the 5th floor of Heaven Chief realm, outside the newly built Immortal City. Naturally, Mengqi was very familiar with this place, and she exclaimed excitedly. There was a hint of tears of joy in her voice. This trip to the Abyss was really dangerous, and she almost couldn't come back. This feeling of returning home really touched her. Even the modeled and dilapidated newly built Immortal City made her miss it very much. Bufong nodded. The familiar buildings showed that they had really returned. The atmosphere in the Heaven Chief realm was really different from that of the Abyss. In the Abyss, the wind was wrapped in killing intent, as if a massacre was about to take place at any time. But in the Heaven Chief realm, the warm and comfortable feeling made people feel like bathing in a spring breeze, very comfortable. Bufong liked this feeling very much. He gently exhaled, and it seemed that all the turbidity in his body was exhaled with this breath. The 3 of them turned their heads and looked across the Immortal City. In the distance, there were also many figures. They were Nether Prison experts. The Bronze Gate was wide open. Many Nether Prison experts walked out of the Nether Prison through the Bronze Gate. These people were naturally not Nether Prison invaders. They were some Nether Prison merchants. As long as there were people, there would be merchants. The Nether Prison was very greedy for many ingredients and minerals in the Heaven Chief realm, which made the merchants see a business opportunity. Therefore, The nether prison merchants traveled between the nether prison and the heaven chief realm. The heaven nether bridge became a passage between the two. The heaven chief realm did not refuse these. It could no longer stay in the heaven chief realm. It needed to communicate. Perhaps this could strengthen the heaven chief realm's ability. The gate of the new immortal city was wide open. There were merchants from both the heaven chief realm and the nether prison merchants coming and going. The appearance of Bufong and the other two did not attract too much attention. With hands clasped behind their backs, the three of them walked toward the new immortal city. Before long, they stepped into the city. Bufong, I'm hungry. You frowned and looked at Bufong, her gray-green hair hanging down. The eruption of the curse made her desire for delicacies even more intense. Bufong nodded. When they returned to the Heaven Chief restaurant, he would cook for you. They entered the immortal city. The city lord of the fifth immortal city, Yaya, appeared in person. She looked around, and when she saw that only Bufong and the other two had returned, her face turned a little pale. Where's the realm lord? Teacher Boo, you're back. When Cece saw Bufong, her eyes lit up, shouting excitedly. Bufong nodded, his eyes falling on the dish Cece had placed on the table. Teacher Boo, this is Cece's latest dish, leek blossoms. Cece said excitedly. Leek blossoms? Bufong was bewildered. Why did this name sound so strange? Why did Cece think of cooking such a dish? Bufong asked, a little puzzled. A strange uncle asked Cece to cook it. Cece said honestly. The strange uncle also provided Cece with ingredients, heavenly spirit leek, and an 8-star beast emperor egg, Cece said, raising her head. Bufong raised his brows, his eyes falling on the dish Cece had cooked. With a glance, the corner of his mouth twitched. Leek scrambled eggs. Of course, it was different from the ordinary leek scrambled eggs. This leek seemed to emit a crystal green color, as if it was blooming with light. Teacher Boo, give it a try. That strange uncle said that if this dish meets his evaluation, he will give Cece the recipe of the Nether Prison 9 Revolution Nether Chef clan. Cece said. Bufong furrowed his brows. He didn't have any good impression of the strange uncle that Cece mentioned. Asking a little girl to cook such a dish is definitely a pervert. Bufong said, his face expressionless. What's wrong with this dish? You asked curiously. Nothing. Try it and tell Cece. Black Dragon King, you better not eat it. Otherwise, don't blame me for not reminding you. Bufong said. Then, he went to the back, intending to enter the kitchen. Teacher Boo, aren't you going to eat it? Cece was a little disappointed. Forget it. Let your sister Nethery taste it for you. Also, when a strange uncle you mentioned appears, call me. Bufong said. Cece was a little puzzled, but she still nodded. The Black Dragon King was confused. Why couldn't he eat it? Was Bufong discriminating against dragons? Yu and Hua looked at each other. Then, they took out their chopsticks, pointed at the table, and reached out their chopsticks towards Cece's chives blossoming. The dark green chives seemed to emit light, mixing with the fragrance of the egg. It tasted very tempting. Yu's red lips parted, stuffing the chives scrambled eggs into her mouth. Her lips were stained with oil, looking crystal clear and tempting. Crunch, 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 crunch. Delicious, Yu's eyes brightened, saying to Cece. Also took a bite of chives blooming flowers. She nodded, praising the dish. The Black Dragon King's heart itched. Looking at Yu and Hua's satisfied faces, he couldn't help but want to eat it. However, thinking of Bufong's words, he felt a little strange. Can I eat it? Or did Bufong bluff him? It must be Bufong bluffing him. He, the Black Dragon King, was a dragon who wanted to eat everything. How could he not eat it? Come, let this Dragon King have a taste. The Black Dragon King picked up his chopsticks excitedly, joining the army of tasters. The Black Dragon King picked up a large piece of scrambled eggs with chives. The sparkling and translucent chives, together with the fragrant egg liquid, made the Black Dragon King excited. He stuffed it into his mouth. Crunching sounds could be heard as he chewed. The chewiness of the heavenly spirit leek and the fragrance of the 8-star beast emperor egg blended together. It was as if there was a strong impact on the walls of his mouth. That feeling was as if a small hand was caressing his body. It's delicious. There's no problem. The Black Dragon King widened his eyes. He looked at you, then at Hua. He picked up another piece, stuffing it into his mouth. Crunch, crunch. The Black Dragon King ate it happily. Suddenly, it was as if a ball of fire was burning in the Black Dragon King's heart. That flame was burning fiercely. The Black Dragon King's face instantly turned red. His eyes seemed to be spewing fire. Of course, it was his body's natural reaction that made him feel ashamed and angry. The Black Dragon King finally understood what Bufang meant when he said that he would be responsible for the consequences. Damn it. Where was the old pervert who asked Cece to cook this thing? This Dragon King would beat him to death. Wah! Throw that black dragon out. Suddenly, Bufang's faint voice came from the kitchen. The Black Dragon King's eyes widened. Hua grinned, nodding excitedly. In the next moment, the Black Dragon King's figure streaked through the air in an elegant arc before crashing outside the restaurant. The Black Dragon King was filled with grief and indignation. He felt an itch in his heart. He was actually thrown out by his daughter. Damn it! In the kitchen, the corners of Bufang's mouth twitched violently. Why didn't that gluttonous black dragon believe what he said? The one who taught Cece to cook this dish was definitely an old pervert. This leek blossom, its effect was self-evident. For men, it was simply a forbidden drug. Cece is still too young. She doesn't know the dangers of society. Luckily, she came back early. Bufang exhaled. Then his mind flickered. A piece of pitch-black bone emerged. As soon as it appeared, a terrifying essence energy burst out. It was as if a Qilint's roar could be heard. It was the dark Qilin bone, which contained thick essence energy. It was the essence of a Qilin, which was more precious than Qilin meat. Bufang planned to use it to cook a dish. Chapter 12:24. The dark Qilin bone was the bone of a pseudo-divine beast. It was considered a saint-grade immortal ingredient, but it was the lowest grade among saint-grade immortal ingredients. At least, it was a good ingredient. Moreover, the Qilin bone was the essence of a Qilin, containing endless essence energy and divine energy. It was the best to use it to make soup. The energy of the Qilin bone would seep out of the bone and fuse with the soup, which could be completely absorbed by the human body. Hunger was the reason why Bufang decided to cook this dish this time. The Curse in Yu's body needed a dish with rich essence energy to suppress it, and this nourishing soup made from the Qilin bone was just right. Actually, stewing soup was also a major category of delicacies. A good soup could make people immersed in it with just one mouthful. However, stewing soup tested the chef's control of the fire. The higher the grade of the ingredient, the more demanding the chef's control of the fire. This was because high-grade ingredients were full of essence. Once the best time was missed, the essence would be easily destroyed, and the essence would be lost, causing the taste to deteriorate. Before stewing the soup, Bufang needed to prepare the ingredients he needed this time. His mind flickered. Bufang's figure entered the heaven and earth farmland. He picked some fresh ingredients and sun-dried ingredients. Then, he returned to the kitchen. Bufang cut these ingredients and placed them in blue and white porcelain bowls. The first blue and white porcelain bowl was filled with dried cinnabar fruit skin. Most of the essence of the cinnabar fruit skin was contained within. If it was used to make soup, it could completely lock in the freshness of the soup. The second bowl was filled with the leaves of the 9-revolution Great Path tea tree. The leaves were cut in half by Bufang, and the fragrance of the tea permeated the air. Besides these, there were some cinnabar, fingernail-sized dried spirit fruits, which are similar to the wolfberries in his previous life. Bufang had seen this kind of spirit fruit before, so he specially planted it in the heaven and earth farmland. The herbs and ingredients were all prepared. Next was the cooking process. Bufang washed the black turtle constellation wok, then placed it on the white tiger heaven stove. Opening his mouth, he spat out a ball of white flame. The flames darted out and tunneled into the white tiger heaven stove, immediately burning fiercely. He poured the spring of life into it, and the clear spring of life emitted a dense life aura. With a thud, he placed the chilin bone into it. The chilin bone contained some chilin meat, but the quantity was very small. It was mainly used to make soup. Starting from the cold water, he slowly heated up the dish in the wok. During this process, Bufang did not release his mental strength. The flames raged and multiplied continuously. Soon, a boiling sensation resounded from the wok. The chilin bone tumbled about within. Bufang frowned. It was as if he could hear the dark chilins while roaring within the chilin bone. This thought had a fatal effect on the taste of the dish. It was the same as cooking braised fish without removing the fishy smell of the fish. It can ruin a dish. As he stretched out his hand, Bufang's spirit sea began to boil. There was a loud rumble. The golden shadow floating above the spirit sea suddenly opened its eyes, and a dazzling golden light burst forth from its eyes. It was as if a sharp beam of light had been shot down. In a short while, it turned into stars and seeped into the black turtle constellation wok. It blended into the soup in the wok. The soup boiled, trembling unceasingly. It was as if a knife had swept over, slashing at the dark chilin. The chilin's roar became more intense, as if it was resisting. However, this resistance was obviously futile. It was as if it had experienced a great battle. The chilin's will was instantly erased. Bufang opened his eyes. He exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. It was visible to the naked eye. A wisp of dark air rose from the chilin bone, slowly dispersing in the air. The following cooking process was not as complicated as before. Bufang took out the chilin bone, using the spring of life to wash the blood foam on it. Then he poured out the soup in the black turtle constellation wok. After washing the chilin bone, he placed it in the center of the black turtle constellation wok. The dark-colored chilin meat was emitting hot steam. He took out a blue and white porcelain bowl. He poured the dried spirit fruit and the sliced sun mother ginger into it as well. He added water to the black turtle constellation wok, making the soup just enough to cover the chilin bone. After doing all this, Bufang's mind flickered. The top of the black turtle constellation wok slowly closed. Next, it was time to boil the soup. Bufang's mental force surged out. It seemed to have turned into strands of silk shooting out and wrapping around the black turtle constellation wok. Like strings of a zither, they could feel the movements of the dishes in the wok. The white immortal flame spurted out, drilling into the bottom of the black turtle constellation wok. The flame grew stronger. It began to heat up. Bufang's hands fell to his waist. His eyelids drooped slightly, his mental force like silk. His eyes looked as if he could see through the black turtle constellation wok, seeing everything inside. The soup was boiling. The energy of the dark chilin bone was released bit by bit, merging into the soup. The strands of mental force wrapping around the black turtle constellation wok danced like the strings of a zither, as if they were playing a melody of high mountains and flowing rivers. When the dark chilin bone's energy was released, beautiful musical notes danced out, forming an intoxicating melody. Cece walked in from outside. She lifted the curtain of the kitchen, making the bell ring. However, it didn't move Bufang's mental force. Cece curiously looked at Bufang, wondering what dish Bufang was cooking. "Teacher Boo, are you making soup?" Cece raised her head, watching curiously. Her nose twitched, and the rich meaty aroma filled her mouth and nose. Her eyes seemed to change, staring at the mental force strings of Bufang, as if she was intoxicated. She felt as if she could hear Bufang's ingredients playing a melodious tune. That kind of primitive music made her completely immersed in it. Teacher Boo's cooking skills were really amazing. The music had a calm foreshadowing, an intense climax, and a gentle ending. Actually, cooking was the same. Under the control of Bufang's mental force, the white flame slowly changed. Halfway through the soup, Bufang opened his eyes. Opening the lid, he added in the dried scarlet fruit skin, wolfberry, and all kinds of spices. As soon as these scents entered the pot, the smell of the soup was boiling. It was turbulent and boiling, as if a palm was gently brushing against his face. The lid was closed once again. The flame was boiling. The music was also getting more and more intense. It was like a torrential downpour, and the strings kept falling. Cece's little face was flushed, and beads of sweat rolled down her forehead as she tried to sense the cooking process. To keep up with Bufong's cooking rhythm, it wasn't a small challenge for Cece. Although his talent wasn't bad, with Bufong's current cooking level, Cece still had to look up to him. After cooking, the fire simmered. Bufong pulled back his mental force threads one by one. He finished cooking. Turning his head, he looked at Cece, his eyes much gentler. "Cece, go out and rest for a while. Prepare to drink the soup," Bufong said gently. Cece nodded obediently. Turning around, she prepared to go out. "All right, if that weird uncle who asked you to cook chives bloom appears, you must tell me," Bufong said solemnly. Society was dangerous. Bufong didn't want Cece to be cheated by a pervert at such a young age. "Okay." Cece smiled and replied. Then, she walked out of the kitchen. Bufong nodded. His eyes turned, falling on the black turtle constellation walk. He opened the lid. Inside the lid, wisps of hot air rose, like a chelan baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, walking in the air. There was an auspicious light, rising, bursting out. It was resplendent and dazzling. Bufong closed his eyes, taking in a deep breath. There was no greasy smell. Instead, there was a refreshing feeling that seeped into the heart and spleen. As the hot air rose, it turned into a galloping chelan above the black turtle constellation walk. Bufong was very satisfied. He rarely cooked soup, but this time he was very satisfied with the soup. Carrying the soup, Bufong walked out of the kitchen and into the restaurant. Ring, ring. The curtain was lifted. The sound instantly attracted the attention of everyone in the restaurant. Cece obediently sat on the chair, while Hua and Yu looked at him with anticipation. Lord Go was nowhere to be found. However, Bufong wasn't worried. As long as that mangy dog didn't bully others, everything would be fine. The Black Dragon King was really thrown away by Little Flower. However, he deserved it. Bufong had warned him. He placed the pitch-black turtle constellation walk in the middle of the table. A thick aroma spread out. It was mellow and alluring, surging with majestic essence energy. Bufong took out a blue and white porcelain bowl. He held a spoon. The broth flowed down the edge of the spoon. Bufong scooped a bowl of broth. The broth seemed to be sparkling, which was very cool. Bufong handed the broth to Yu. "Drink it while it's hot," Bufong said. This dish should have a good effect on suppressing the cursed snake in Yu's body. Then, Bufong continued to scoop the broth. Swish! He also scooped a bowl for Cece. The swirling broth looked very beautiful. The broth's oil formed a wreath, which looked very breathtaking. Yu held the blue and white porcelain bowl with both of her hands. The warm air in the steaming bowl made Yu feel warm, which made her cold body feel warm. The swirling broth and the wreath were like blooming flowers, attracting people's eyes. The aroma of the broth permeated the air. You couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Her red lips pursed. Just as he was about to drink the broth, footsteps suddenly rang out outside the restaurant. The footsteps made Bufong stop scooping the broth. He slightly furrowed his brows. The footsteps were very heavy, as if a mountain was walking. Bufong instinctively raised his head, looking over. He saw a meatball slowly approaching from a distance. What? Bufong furrowed his brows. The meatball walked domineeringly, reaching the restaurant's door. However, it was stuck there. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Where did this clown come from? Holding the broth, Cece turned her head and saw the chubby meatball. Her eyes instantly lit up. "Teacher Boo, it's him. He's the weird uncle who asked Cece to cook chives blossoming." Cece shouted excitedly. "Oh, so is this Fatty?" No wonder Cece said that he was a weird uncle. Indeed, it was weird to be able to eat so much. It was also a kind of skill. The restaurant's door wasn't narrow, but Bufong had never imagined that someone could be stuck in the door. Even Fatty Jean, the moneybags of the Light Wind Empire, the fattest person Bufong had ever seen, couldn't be stuck in the door. This fatty's life must have been so good that he could develop horizontally like this. Smells so good. This meaty aroma. It's so pure, with a trace of dark energy. This ingredient is definitely of high quality. I've never seen it before. The fatty was stuck in the door. His body squirmed, and his nose twitched as he sniffed the meaty aroma. He couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. I smelled this pure meaty aroma from afar. It really didn't disappoint me. All right, brother. Your door is a little narrow. You need to fix it. Fatty Ding squirmed for a while before squeezing through the door. Wiping the sweat on his forehead, he shouted at Bufong. With a glance, Fatty Ding saw the broth in the black turtle constellation walk. Huffing and puffing, he walked to the table and sat on a chair. He smiled as if he was close with Bufong. Then he rubbed his hands, the fat on his body jiggling. He said to Bufong, "Brother, give me a bowl of broth." Yu and Hua glanced at him, then retracted their gazes. Finally, their gazes locked on the bowl in his hand. Bufong looked at Fatty Ding, his face gradually becoming solemn. Was this the weird uncle who had led Cece astray? Leading Cece astray, and she still wanted to drink the broth? No meat, no broth. Do you want the bowl? Bufong expressionlessly looked at Fatty Ding. Chapter 1225. Fatty Ding loved to eat, and he liked all kinds of delicious food. He had once gone to the 9 Revolution Nether Chef clan's land just to ask for a delicious meal. He was even willing to exchange expensive ingredients for it. In Fatty Ding's opinion, there would be no fun in life if there was no food. In addition to making money, there was also delicious food in a distant future. By chance, he learned about the Heaven Chief Realm. After the trade route between Nether Prison and the Heaven Chief Realm was opened, he was the first to step into the Heaven Chief Realm. Of course, that was excluding the normal trading hours of merchants. Most of the time, he was looking for food in the Heaven Chief Realm. The Heaven Chief Realm was indeed a holy land for gluttons that was not weaker than the 9 Revolution Nether Chef clan. The food here was simply dazzling, and there were all kinds of superb chefs, which made him inexplicably excited. However, after searching for many days and comparing, he learned from the people of the Heaven Chief Realm about a famous restaurant. It was this restaurant called Immortal Chef Little Store. When he stepped into the restaurant, he found that the chef was just a little girl about 7 or 8 years old. The restaurant owner was not around. This made Fatty Ding feel strange and suspicious. He believed in and liked delicious food, but could the food cooked by a 7-year-old girl really move and attract him? This was what made him uncertain. If a bad food entered the stomach, it would be like eating chaff, making people uncomfortable all over. Therefore, he made an agreement with Cece. If Cece's leek blossom could conquer him, he would give Cece a recipe, which he had exchanged with a lot of money from the 9 Revolution Nether Chef clan. Moreover, he would provide all the ingredients and let Cece cook for him. However, as soon as he arrived at the Heaven Chief restaurant, he did not smell the aroma of leek blossom. Instead, he was completely intoxicated by the rich and mellow aroma of meat. It was bone soup, which was different from ordinary meat soup. It was a great tonic. Amidst the faint aroma, he could feel the nobility and supremacy of the cooked bones. Such a bowl of soup was absolutely attractive. However, the restaurant owner did not seem to welcome him. "Brother, don't you have a lot of soup? Give me a bowl. I have something good to share with everyone." Fatty Ding grinned as he stared at the black turtle constellation wok on the table. Saliva continuously flowed from his mouth. "I have money. I can buy it. Immortal crystals, right? Name your price." Fatty Ding seemed to have thought of something. He looked up at Bufong and winked. The fats on his body were trembling. However, only Bufong's expressionless face responded to him. Nethery and the others glanced at Fatty Ding for a moment, then looked away. If Bufong didn't give it to him, no one else could eat it. Nethery twitched her mouth. Then, holding the steaming bowl of soup, her red lips parted slightly as she moved closer to it. Asterisk gulp. Asterisk the edges of the blue and white porcelain bowl were slightly warm because of the broth. When her red lips came into contact with his, The warm sensation made one's spirit shiver. The fragrance of the meat soup permeated the air and seeped into his skin. Rumble. The first mouthful of soup went into his mouth. The surface of the soup was covered with a layer of fat, which was thin but not greasy. Together with the soup, it also dripped into his mouth. Thus, the circles on the surface of the soup also changed. As soon as the soup entered his mouth, wisps of essence, energy diffused. The soup was light brown. It was brewed with many immortal herbs and chilan bones. The essence of the chilan bones had seeped out and blended with the soup. The soup contained the essence of the chilan bones, the skin of the scarlet fruit, and the medicinal properties of many immortal herbs. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a bowl of elixir cuisine. But more than that, it was a bowl of meat soup. She drank the soup that warmed her heart and lungs. The soup was tasty and salty. Together with the taste of the immortal herbs, this bowl of soup was like a treasure. Nethery took a sip of the wine. It was as if a stream of heat had flowed into his mouth and flowed down his throat, expelling the coldness in his body and sweeping away his fatigue. In particular, the energy contained in the soup constantly nourished his body, making it seem as if his body was about to radiate light. At this moment, Nethery's pale face turned ruddy. The originally wild, cursed snake seemed to become quiet at this moment, gradually falling into a deep sleep. Nethery's grayish-green hair had turned a few shades darker. The effect of this bowl of meat soup seemed to be not bad. You gently exhaled a breath of hot air, her eyes a little blurred. She couldn't bear to let go of the warm soup. She shook her head and blew on the surface of the soup, blowing away the heat on the surface. After blowing away, she sizzled. Then, she drank another mouthful of soup. Smacking her lips, she exhaled hot air. Delicious, Nethery thought to herself happily. If she could drink such a bowl of heartwarming soup every day, how happy she would be. Cece also held the soup bowl. She knew better than you how precious this bowl of soup was. When Bufong was cooking, the spirit threads played a moving piece of music, which made Cece addicted to it until now. Teacher Boo's cooking skills amazed her, so she tasted this bowl of soup with a kind of reverence. After a mouthful of soup, Cece's eyes narrowed, intoxicated by the mellow broth. Gulp! Fatty Ding swallowed his saliva. With his experience as a foodie, just by smelling the aroma of the soup, he knew how delicious this bowl of soup was. However, he couldn't drink such a bowl of soup. That was the most unbearable part of it all. Brother, how about 10,000 immortal crystals for a bowl of soup? Immortal crystals are not a problem. Fatty Ding's heart was itching. However, Bufong still looked at him with an expressionless face. He refused without hesitation. After turning down Fatty Ding, Bufong also took out a porcelain bowl and scooped a bowl of soup for himself. Gulp! Gulp! Bufong also picked up the bowl and began to drink. The boiling soup bowl, the boiling soup, and the boiling heart. After drinking a bowl of hot soup, he felt as if his whole body was enveloped in a warm stove. Bufong was very satisfied. The dark chilan bone was indeed extraordinary. This trip to the abyss was worth it. Fatty Ding watched as Bufong happily drank the soup, and his heart was filled with anxiety. It was as if there was a knife cutting the fat on his body. "Give me a bowl, brother!" Fatty Ding wanted to cry, almost kneeling on the ground. He was a man who was fearless for delicious food. A strong smell of wine came from outside the door. Oh, this is the smell of the 800-year-old abyss demon wine. Fatty Ding's nose, which was almost invisible because of the fat on his body, twitched. He determined the origin of this wine fragrance. Instantly, he was amazed. The 800-year-old abyss demon wine was priceless. How could there be such a wine fragrance in this restaurant? Bufong also made a sound of surprise, raising his head to look outside the door. Instantly, he saw a black dog carrying a thigh, slowly walking in with clumsy cat-like steps. "Lord Go." Bufong couldn't help but ask when he saw the black dog. "Cece, Hua, you?" And the others also looked at Lord Go, their eyes shining. Fatty Ding looked at the dog, his fat shaking. This dog was definitely not ordinary. Lord Go walked with clumsy, cat-like steps, hiccuping. There was no flush on his black dog face. He stepped into the restaurant. Lord Go's nose twitched. Of course, he smelled the meat soup. The soup also had the familiar smell of the Chelan bone. Lord Go swung his paw. Immediately, the Chelan thigh on his shoulder flew toward Bufong. Bufong, boy, Lord Go brought you a gift. Lord Go said, hiccuping. Even the wine fragrance emitted from the hiccups was incomparably rich and intoxicating. Bufong sighed. Even Acheron's helplessness couldn't be compared to this 800-year-old abyss demon wine. This was the first time Bufong had seen a top-grade wine. It was a pity that he hadn't had the chance to taste it. This is the top-grade wine from the abyss, one of the best wines in the entire netherworld. Fatty Ding said, looking at Lord Go strangely. In the legends, there are 3 great wines in the netherworld. The third is this 800-year-old abyss demon wine. Its brewing process is extremely complicated. The second is the supreme, forgetting wine of the 9 Revolution Nether Chef clan, which wine saint spent his whole life to brew. A cup of forgetting and a cup of oblivion. Fatty Ding smacked his lips. And the one that ranks first is the most mysterious wine in the netherworld. It's limited to legends, a jar of wine that no one has ever seen before. It's said to be a peerless wine that can make a top great saint drunk with just 1 drop. I don't know the name of that wine either. Fatty Ding said he had never tasted any of the 3 wines mentioned above. Although he was rich, although he was a big businessman in Nether Prison. However, there were some things that couldn't be obtained with money. Some chefs had extremely strange tempers, and money couldn't buy them. Just like at this moment, when he couldn't drink Bufong's meat soup, his heart felt stifled. Bufong caught the dark Chelan thigh that Lord Go had thrown over, his face slightly stunned. This black dog had peeled off the dark Chelan's leg. Last time, it had peeled off the great sage's leg, and this time, it had peeled off the dark Chelan's leg. Could it be that this black dog had a special fondness for legs? Bufong was very suspicious. However, he didn't think too much about it. The dark Chelan's leg was a good thing, not weaker than the great sage's leg. After all, they were all ingredients at the great sage's level. Ingredients of this level were really hard to come by. Hence, Bufong carefully put it into the system's dimensional storage. His mind flickered. He scooped up a bowl of soup. With a flick of his fingers, the soup bowl flew toward Lord Go. Lord Go leaned against the corner of the wall, and the soup bowl instantly fell in front of him. A rich aroma burst out from the soup bowl. Lord Go's drunken eyes instantly lit up, and his nose twitched. Then he moved closer to the soup bowl, sticking out his tongue to lick the meat soup. Once he licked, he couldn't stop. The soup was like a bone-eating poison, making Lord Go completely immersed in the delicious meat soup. Fatty Ding's eyes widened, looking at Bufong with some grief and indignation. He actually gave a dog soup, but not him. He was a top businessman in the Nether Prison. Couldn't he be compared to a dog? Although this dog seemed to be awesome, even drinking 800-year-old abyssal demon wine. But this didn't rule out the fact that he was a dog. You asked my apprentice to cook a dish like leek blossom, and you still have the face to ask me for soup? Bufong put down the soup bowl in his hand. After wiping off the water stains on his hands, he calmly raised his head, looking at Fatty Ding. The fat on the latter's face instantly trembled, and he seemed to understand. Then, Fatty Ding felt extremely sullen. This was all a misunderstanding. He asked Cece to cook leek blossom because he just happened to think of it. How could he have improper thoughts about a little kid? Fatty Ding was pure. The untainted shall buy flower. Fatty Ding's sullen eyes seemed to have tears seeping out. He raised his chubby hand, covering his mouth, pursing his lips. Boom! Suddenly, outside the restaurant, a wave of terrifying aura filled the air. 2 silhouettes rushed in like black lightning. They were 2 Nether Prison experts with long swords in their hands. Bufong froze, narrowing his eyes as he glanced at them. The aura of these 2 people was very strong. They were actually 2 half-step saints. Boss Ding, when they appeared, they glanced at Fatty Ding, nodded, and said. They were Fatty Ding's guards. As a big businessman, he naturally had guards protecting him at all times. Money makes the world go round. Even a half-sane expert needed resources, and Fatty Ding could provide them with resources. Fatty Ding covered his mouth and was about to say something. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. Cause trouble? Bu Fong said lightly. At the thought of causing trouble, Bu Fong thought of Xiao Bai. He sighed inwardly. It seemed that he had to find some time to find a puppet's heart and repair Xiao Bai. He missed Xiao Bai's words. Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others. Thinking of this, Bu Fong's eyes became cold. However, don't think that without Xiao Bai, you can't be stripped. A moment later, he took a step. The vermilion robe on his body instantly turned into thousands of streams of light. On the other side, Lord Go lay on the ground, sticking out his tongue and licking the soup. You and the other's eyes fell on Bu Fong. Fatty Ding froze. The eyes of Fatty Ding's two bodyguards suddenly became sharp. Their swords instantly flew out. As guards, we naturally have to do the job of a guard. A moment later, the whole restaurant was filled with sword light. Bu Fong's face was indifferent. He looked indifferently. His mind flickered. In his spirit sea, monstrous waves were set off. The golden divine dragon excitedly roared. Then, under the gazes of you and the others, Bu Fong's pitch-black hair turned golden at a speed visible to the naked eye. The dragon roar rang out. Bu Fong's aura suddenly changed. Lord Go, who was licking the soup, suddenly narrowed his eyes and looked at Bu Fong. This glance was filled with astonishment. Had it drunk too much and become muddle-headed? As soon as the blonde Bu Fong appeared, strange laughter came from Bu Fong's mouth. The laughter echoed in the whole restaurant. It made you and the others dumbfounded. Bu Fong laughed. Fatty Ding sucked in a breath of cold air. He opened his mouth, wanted to say something. However, his two bodyguards had already drawn their swords and attacked Bu Fong. Rip! Rip! Blonde Bu Fong's eyes were blurred, but he had a grin on his face. He stretched out his hands. He flicked his fingers on the swords of the two half-step saints. Buzz invisible waves spread. A ripping sound rang out. Their clothes were torn. The faces of the two guards were filled with fear as they were sent flying backward. Their clothes were stripped off, and their naked bodies turned into beautiful arcs as they fell outside the door. Fatty Ding opened his mouth. Then, blonde Bu Fong's fluttering hair and exaggerated smile appeared in front of him. Remember, the one who stripped you is Nicholas the Handsome Dragon. Blonde Bu Fong's eyebrows jumped up and down in an exaggerated manner. Fatty Ding instantly felt suffocated. How could this man's attitude change so much? Wasn't he supposed to be cold and aloof? Then, his luxurious clothes were torn to shreds. Cloth flew everywhere. His fat jiggled. His huge body flew backward and got stuck in a door. Blonde Bu Fong laughed strangely. He walked behind Fatty Ding's body. Then he flicked his fingers on the indignant Fatty Ding's, but the latter was instantly sent flying. He hit the ground. Waha! Blonde Bu Fong covered his face and laughed. But soon, his laughter came to an abrupt stop. His blonde hair turned black in an instant. His laughter turned into an expressionless face. He glanced at Fatty Jean outside the door. Bu Fong gently exhaled, shaking his head. What a boring stripping. Chapter 12:26. Two half-step saints were nothing to Bu Fong, but Bu Fong was too lazy to do it himself. He decided to try the tool, spirit possession. The effect was pretty good. It was easy for him to deal with two half-step saints. However, it was normal. If it was so difficult for him to deal with two half-step saints, what was the point of Bu Fong having the tool spirit possession? After all, Bu Fong's cultivation base had reached the half-step saint level. Bu Fong wasn't very interested in stripping people's clothes. In fact, it would be more charming if Xiao Bai did it. Outside the restaurant, Fatty Ding and his guard got up with a dumbfounded look on their faces. They felt a chill on their bodies. Their faces had turned the color of pig liver. The others outside the restaurant were already used to it. It was normal for people to be stripped in the Great Demon's restaurant. Of course, for the people in the restaurant, everything that had happened in the blink of an eye just now had a huge impact. That fresh, refined, and unpretentious laughter, that head of bright blonde hair, and that smile on Owner Boo's face, what a damned smile. Owner could actually smile. What was going on? When did Owner learn to make so many expressions? Cece's mouth fell open, and her eyes widened in disbelief. Was this still the serious, cold, and handsome teacher she knew? It completely subverted her worldview. Not only Cece, but Hua, Yu, and even Lord Go were also horrified. Lord Go was so shocked that he almost continued to lick the broth. You didn't see me. Bufang looked at the shocked people and suddenly rubbed his brows, feeling a headache coming on. Was his image completely subverted in people's hearts? Yu and the others nodded. When they saw Bufang, who was as expressionless as ever, they heaved a sigh of relief. This was the Owner they knew. The broth was finished. Yu's complexion also became rosy. Hua finished the soup and ran to Lord Go's side. She hugged Lord Go's thigh and rubbed her face against it contentedly. Hua always enjoyed the scent of Lord Go. As for Yu, with a red face, she went back to her room to rest. Cece held the bowl and excitedly went into the kitchen to practice cooking. After Bufang had tidied up everything, he pulled a chair and leisurely sat in front of the restaurant's entrance. The warm sunlight shone on his body gently, making him feel comfortable and satisfied. Time passed quickly. When the sun went down, Bufang returned to the restaurant and closed the door. The kitchen was still brightly lit. Cece was still practicing her cooking skills. Her cooking skills had improved very quickly. The provocation she had suffered in the immortal kitchen pavilion had greatly stimulated the little girl, causing her to constantly practice diligently. It was as if she wanted to prove something to everyone. Perhaps she didn't want to ruin her reputation as Bufang's apprentice. After all, Teacher Bu was so awesome. Practicing cooking is a step-by-step process. You need to know how to strike a balance between work and rest. Bufang stepped into the kitchen and saw the little girl waving the kitchen knife to practice her knife skills. He couldn't help but frown. He rubbed Cece's head and asked her to bring a chair to sit on. Bufang made a vermilion fruit-flavored ice cream and gave it to Cece, asking her to take a break. Cece looked at the food curiously. After taking a bite, she was completely attracted. Although Cece was precocious, she was still a little girl. She had no resistance to ice cream, and she was completely captivated by its delicious taste. Taking advantage of this time, Bufang rolled up his sleeves, preparing to cook a dish. This dish was called sword pot. It was the cooking method that the system rewarded him with. It was rare for the system to reward him with a cooking method. That was why this dish was hard to come by. Bufang was a little serious. He was reading about the cooking method of the sword pot in his mind. The recipe given by the system was very detailed about the cooking method of this dish. Sword pot. The ingredient is the earth prison sword feather crane. The earth prison sword feather crane is a special spirit beast from the cave of the fallen gods in earth prison. It has its own sword intent, which is incomparably sharp and lethal. It lives in flocks, and wherever it goes, it leaves a trail of sword marks. Among them, the king of the earth prison, Sword Feather Crane, has comprehended the complete sword intent. Its body can transform into a sword. The system's serious voice rang in Bufang's mind. It explained the cooking method and origin of sword pot to Bufang. Standing in front of the stove, Bufang was lost in thought. In the distance, Cece was happily eating her ice cream while looking curiously at Bufang. What delicious dish is Teacher Bu going to cook this time? Bufang didn't stay in thought for long. Soon, Bufang opened his eyes and came to the cupboard. As soon as he opened it, a terrible sword intent shot out of it. The sword intent was extremely sharp. It seemed to have turned into many invisible little swords, stabbing toward Bufang. However, when it came to this kind of bird-type spirit beast, of course, Bufang had his own way of suppressing it. In his spirit sea, the vermilion bird's pressure merged with his body and spread out. The vermilion robe on his body turned crimson, and there was a glazed brilliance flashing on it. Boom! A loud and clear bird cry resounded through the air. The violent sword intent that shot out from the cupboard instantly stopped. Bufang reached out his hand, grabbing a sword feather crane from the cupboard. It was a snow-white crane. Its feathers were milky white, without a speck of dust. However, the most distinctive feature was its temperament. It was like a long sword that hadn't been unsheathed. Each feather on its body seemed to contain sword intent like an arrow. If the sword intent swept out, it could cut everything. Sword pot was different from any dish that Bu Fong had cooked before. Thus, Bu Fong needed to spend more time to study it. It was precisely because he had pondered enough that Bu Fong chose to start cooking. He took out the Black Turtle Constellation wok and heated it up. The boiling spring of life in the wok stirred. He put the sword feather crane into the wok. After processing it, he drained its blood and plucked its feathers. All the steps were done in an orderly manner. The sword feather crane's feathers were like sharp swords. The plucked feathers were thrown on the ground. Each of them was very heavy, like a dagger, clanking softly. It was full of characteristics. Bu Fong continued in an orderly manner. The difficulty of cooking this sword pot wasn't high. It was even lower than the bone soup. With the dragon bone kitchen knife, the entire sword feather crane was cut into small pieces. After pouring hot oil over it, he put it into the wok and stir-fried it. Then, he added a large amount of sun mother ginger and stir-fried it. After stir-frying it, he took out an earth-colored clay pot that the system had prepared. After pouring the cooked dishes into the clay pot, Bu Fong covered it with a lid. He had to simmer it over low heat until it was thick. It was a very time-consuming process. However, at this moment, Bu Fong was very calm. He wasn't in a hurry. He sat cross-legged on the ground, waiting for the pot to be ready. Cece finished her ice cream and didn't disturb Bu Fong. Instead, she quietly observed Honorbu's cooking. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Bu Fong, who was controlling the fire, pondered. What was the meaning of the system giving him a dish like the sword pot? However, Bu Fong changed his mind. Perhaps the system wanted Bu Fong to use the sword pot to fuse with the gourmet array. Perhaps the dish provided by the system could fuse with the gourmet array more easily. Gurgle. In the clay pot, there was hot steam rising and boiling continuously. The aroma lingered, enticing one's appetite. White smoke billowed from the clay pot. The smoke turned into sharp, long swords above the clay pot, as though they were about to tear the void apart. Even Bu Fong was a little shocked by the sword intent rising from the clay pot. This sword intent seemed a little frightening. At least, Bu Fong was a little frightened. The sword pot could be said to be finished just like that. There wasn't any technique to make it tender. Everything looked so easy. He picked up the clay pot. Cece also finished her ice cream. Curiously, she raised her head, looking at Bu Fong. Cece was also very interested in the dish cooked by Bu Fong, because the dish this time seemed a little strange. It was completely different from the previous dishes. Bu Fong opened his eyes. Inside the basin-sized clay pot, there was the sword pot. Bu Fong clasped his hands, standing in front of the sword pot as he pondered. He didn't taste it first. Instead, he stared at it carefully. After watching for a long time, Bu Fong suddenly understood. He always felt that something was missing. Now, it seemed that the ingredients lacked the will of the great path. Thus, this sword pot wasn't finished yet. Holding the sword pot, Bu Fong said to Cece. Then, he disappeared, entering the heaven and earth farmland. Finding Nyo-Han-san, he placed the sword pot on the table. Looking at the big clay pot, Nyo-Hansen's eyes brightened. Honorbu, you're too polite. Who do you think you are? You actually brought the dish here for this old cow to taste. How can I accept this? Nyo-Hansen grinned. While talking, he reached out his hand, lifting the lid of the clay pot. But as soon as the lid was lifted, instantly, surging hot air rose, shooting up into the sky. The hot air rolled, as if there was a sharp blade bursting out from the clay pot, making Nyo-Hansen's heart jump. Gulp! Nyo-Hansen's movements froze. After a long time, he looked at Bu Fong. How could there be sword wool in a dish? Moreover, looking at the sword intent, it seemed to want to tear everything. Nyo-Hansen took a deep breath. This thing, can it be eaten? Nyo-Hansen's mouth trembled. He knew that Honorbu wouldn't be so kind as to bring him food. Have a taste. See what's missing as a carrier of the death food tool. Bu Fong clasped his hands, his face expressionless as he said to Nyo-Han-san. Nyo-Han-san nodded. Then he reached out his chopsticks. Swish! In the clay pot, Pieces of crane meat were shaking. The skin was soft, brownish red, and there were thick slices of ginger inside. The ginger flavor of the Sun Mother ginger mixed with the sword intent of the sword feather crane, which somehow complemented each other. It was so sharp that it seemed like it could tear the sky. Bufong reached his chopsticks into the clay pot. After a while, he picked up a piece of meat. Nyohan-san opened his mouth, looking at Bufong. On this piece of meat, there seemed to be sword energy moving. That sword energy was so sharp that it seemed like it could cut the void. This thing, he had to eat it. Nyohan-san wondered if his mouth would be torn into pieces. Owner Bu, is it really okay? Nyohan-san was still a little skeptical, looking at Bufong. Bufong furrowed his brows. Why was this Nyohan-san so hesitant like a girl? The corners of his mouth twitched. Bufong grabbed his chopsticks, pushing the ginger slices away from the clay pot. Then, he picked up a piece of brownish-red crane meat. He put the crane meat into his mouth. Bufong's teeth slowly bit down. Swish! The meat bit down. The sound of sword energy cutting through the air resounded. A sword intent shot out from Bufong's mouth. That sword intent stabbed into the ground and actually pierced a small hole in the ground. Nyohan-san swallowed his saliva, glaring. Owner Bu, was he trying to kill a cow? If he ate it, if the sword intent burst out, wouldn't he be pierced into a sieve? You try. Bufong put down his chopsticks, chewing the crane meat. A thick meat aroma came from his mouth. Nyohan-san was still a little hesitant. However, thinking that Bufong had eaten it, then he should have a taste, so he picked up a small piece of crane meat, stuffing it into his mouth. As soon as it entered his mouth, the expression in Nyohan-san's eyes suddenly changed. Chapter 12:27. To his surprise, the crane meat tasted so good in his mouth. The soft and tender texture exploded in his mouth in an instant. The crane meat was full of elasticity, and when he bit it, his teeth felt as if they were going to bounce off. The feeling in his mouth made Nyohan-san's eyes go wide. Sizzle. Just like Bufong, he shot out a jet of sword energy from his mouth. The sword energy shot out and hit the ground, piercing a small hole. There was also hot air lingering in the small holes. Its power wasn't weak at all. Nyohan-san forgot to chew. This thing didn't have a gourmet array, but its power wasn't weaker than the bursting meatball. If it had a gourmet array, the jet of sword energy it shot out, would it be able to reach the sky? Nyohan-san smacked his lips as if he hadn't had enough. He reached out his chopsticks again, picked up another piece of crane meat, and put it in his mouth. Then he bit it. Sizzle. Another sharp sword chi shot out and smashed into the ground, piercing a hole in the ground. Smoke filled the air. Not bad, not bad. Delicious. Nyohan-san looked at the small hole and seemed to enjoy eating. He picked up another piece of meat, and, with another sizzle, he shot out another jet of sword energy. This feeling seemed to be very good. Bufong looked at Nyohan-san, the corners of his mouth twitching. Do you feel anything different? Bufong asked. It lacks some will of the great path. Otherwise, it would be a very good carrier for death food tools, even better than the perishing pot. Nyohan-san said honestly. Bufong nodded seriously, thinking that what he said made sense. So, I'll leave the task of making ingredients contain the will of the great path to you. I think you're very familiar with this. Bufong looked at Nyohan-san and said sincerely. Then his mind flickered. A sword feather crane appeared in his hand. The system had prepared a total of 3 sword feather cranes for him. He had killed one, so there were 2 left. These 2 were perfect for Nyohan-san to add the will of the heavenly Tao. Nyohan-san stuffed a piece of crane meat into his mouth, blinking his eyes. He glanced at the sword feather crane in Bufong's hand and took a deep breath. The sharpness of the sword feather crane's sword aura gave him a fright. What a terrifying sword aura! Is this the ingredient in the clay pot? Sure enough, every chef was a natural artist, possessing the power of uncanny craftsmanship. For the sword feather crane to be made like this, it was also a form of skill. Then I'll try my best. Nyohan-san took the sword feather crane from Bufong, then turned and walked toward the back of the cabin. After a while, he trotted back. He moved closer to the clay pot and continued to eat the crane meat. A piece of crane meat entered his mouth. Instantly, a jet of sword energy shot out from his mouth, drilling into the ground. Nyohan-san was elated. He found that if he could make this thing well, it would be a death food tool that was even more awesome than the bursting pissing meatball. Think about it when you're fighting. He held a clay pot in his hand. Picking up a piece of crane meat, he bit it. Instantly, the meat shot out a jet of sword energy. The jet of sword energy pierced through the enemy. The feeling of strolling leisurely in the courtyard, the feeling of killing the enemy with a single bite, just thinking about it made him excited. Bufang looked at Nyohan-san, who was eating happily, but he didn't say anything. He left the sword pot there, letting him eat, then left the heaven and earth farmland. Something like a death food tool couldn't be rushed. He had to study it slowly. Of course, if he could make it into a death food tool, Bufang would be busy again. He returned to the kitchen. Cece was still sitting on the chair, licking the bowl of ice cream until the whole bowl was clean. "Teacher Boo, what delicacy is this? It's so delicious," Cece said happily. "It's called ice cream. It's cooked by another apprentice of mine." Bufang said, rubbing Cece's head. However, he was quickly stunned as he fell into deep thought. Now that the restaurant had many branches, it wasn't a good thing to let so many branches spread out without any communication. Bufang wondered if the system had a way to let his apprentices gather together and exchange cooking skills. Perhaps their cooking skills could be improved. "System, what do you think?" Bufang asked the system. He felt that it was necessary to implement this idea. Facing Bufang's question, the system fell into silence, as though it was thinking. Bufang wasn't in a hurry. He hoped that he could gather all the apprentice chefs from different restaurants to exchange knowledge and improve together. Teacher Boo's other apprentice? Cece's eyes suddenly lit up, and the curiosity in her heart suddenly burst. She had heard from Nethery that Bufang had many restaurants, and each of them had apprentice chefs. Now that she found out that Bufang wanted to talk to her, she was excited. Although she was addicted to cooking, she was still a child after all. She would always feel tired if she practiced cooking alone. So, sometimes, she wanted someone to communicate with. "Host, please pay attention." The system's serious voice rang out. Bufang's eyes narrowed. About the host's suggestion to gather the apprentice chefs from different restaurants, the system has analyzed and found it feasible. To implement it, a plane carrier is needed. The system said. Bufang furrowed his brows. He knew what the system meant. A plane carrier was needed, which meant a place for the apprentice chefs to communicate. And this place couldn't be the Heaven Chief Realm, nor could it be the Light Wind Empire. Because the level of the plane was different, the system couldn't let the apprentice chefs cross over. Bufang furrowed his brows and fell into deep thought. The system suggests that the host can use the Heaven and Earth farmland as a plane carrier so that all the apprentice chefs can gather and communicate in the farmland. The system's voice rang out. Bufang's eyes lit up as if he had just been enlightened. Heaven and Earth farmland. That's right, this is a good idea. Just like how Jing Yuan could go to the Heaven and Earth farmland to get milk. This idea is feasible. In the Heaven and Earth farmland, there is no need to worry about the plane carrier, and the level of the plane will not affect the apprentice chefs. Bufang nodded and said, "Yes, it's feasible. According to the host's suggestion, we will now begin to build the restaurant's portal." The system's serious voice continued to ring out. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. His eyes moved and met Cece's curious eyes. Rubbing Cece's head, Bufang's mouth curled up. "Cece, Teacher Boo will take you to a fun place," Bufang said. Cece was bewildered. A moment later, she cheered. "A fun place? Good, good," Cece said excitedly. Then, Bufang raised his head, reached out his hand, and pointed ahead. "Do you know what's behind that door?" Bufang asked Cece. Cece froze. She followed Bufang's finger, and her small face was filled with disbelief. Why is there a door there?" Cece asked curiously. As someone who had practiced cooking in a restaurant's kitchen for a long time, Cece was very familiar with every little detail in the restaurant. After all, when she was practicing cooking, Cece would wander around the kitchen. However, She was sure that there should be no such door in the restaurant. Can't we just open the door and see? Teacher Boo, the other apprentice chefs, are all behind that door. Bu Fong said. Cece's eyes instantly sparkled with excitement. She dashed to the door. It was a bronze door with no complicated patterns carved on it. There was only a doorknob. Teacher Boo, come here. Cece grabbed the doorknob. She wanted to open it, but she was a little hesitant. She glanced at Bu Fong, then hurriedly shouted. She wanted Bu Fong to come and cheer her up. Bu Fong walked over. There was a cracking sound. The doorknob was twisted. With a squeak, the door was opened. A gust of wind blew over. Bu Fong pulled Cece's small hand, stepping through the door. This was the transportation door built by the system, which was responsible for transporting people from Bu Fong's restaurants to the heaven and earth farmland. Russell, everything in front of his eyes became clear. Cece held Bu Fong's hand, hiding behind him in fear. However, when she saw the beautiful scenery of the heaven and earth farmland behind the door, she dropped her jaw, her eyes sparkling. So beautiful! Cece couldn't help but exclaim. The wind blew on the grass, and the chicks could be seen. 80 was running happily in the grass. Suddenly, its body stiffened, and it turned its head to look. It saw Bu Fong. With one look, little 8 was instantly filled with fear. It remembered how scary the chef looked when he turned into a red-haired man. 80 shivered. Without saying a word, it turned and ran. Then, it disappeared into the bushes. When the 8 treasures pigs saw Bu Fong, it did the same thing, rolling and crawling away. Teacher Boo, chicks and piglets seem to be afraid of you. Cece said curiously. Maybe it's because I'm handsome. Bu Fong answered with an expressionless face. He glanced at 80 and 8 treasures pig, twitching his mouth. Creak. The sound of the door opening resounded. Cece's attention was instantly attracted, and she looked around. The wind in the heaven and earth farmland suddenly became stronger. The fragrance of grass filled the air. The first door opened. A graceful figure walked out. She was carrying a wooden bucket, and she seemed to be used to it. However, when she opened the door, she saw Bu Fong and Bu Fong holding Cece's hand. Jing Yuan was a little surprised. Head Chef Bu? Bu Fong just nodded at Jing Yuan. Cece, this is Teacher Bu's other apprentice. Bu Fong said to Cece. Cece looked at Jing Yuan with a little fear. Then, she pulled Bu Fong's arm and nodded at Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan froze. Then, a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Creak, creak, creak. Around them more doors opened. Jing Yuan and Cece curiously looked over. There, 3 doors opened. Looking at the 3 gates, Bu Fong's heart surged with emotions, because he knew that those 3 doors represented his 3 restaurants. Fong's little store cloud missed restaurant 3 shops in the Hidden Dragon continent. Oh, how come there's another door in the restaurant? The workmanship of this door is really rubbish. It's not as good as the door in my house. A gentle voice rang out. Then a figure opened the door, and a head popped out. It was a beautiful face, with a fair complexion and snow-white skin. Her hair was tied up with a velvet rope, just like Bu Fong. If this person didn't have an Adam's apple, she would have spoken with a man's voice. Cece and Jing Yuan almost thought that it was a woman. Xiao Xiaolong walked out of the door. A gust of wind blew over, causing him to close his eyes in a daze. It had been a long time since they last met. Xiao Xiaolong had grown a lot taller, and he had become more beautiful, more feminine. From a little boy, he had grown into a pretty boy. VF*CK. Opening his misty eyes, Xiao Xiaolong saw Bu Fong, who was holding Cece's hand in the distance. The gaze seemed to see through 1,000 years. Bu? Owner Bu? VF*CK? Am I hallucinating? Didn't you go to the Heaven Chief realm? And who is this girl? How long has it been? And you already have a daughter. The F*CK. Really? I admire you. Xiao Xiaolong was amazed. He hadn't seen Bu Fong for a long time. He didn't expect that Bu Fong would give him such a big gift. He thought of something. Xiao Xiaolong hurriedly turned around, shouting toward the door. Sister Yu Fu, come quickly. Owner Bu has brought the girl back to see us. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched, and black lines appeared on his forehead. He wished he could slap this guy to death. Chapter 1228. Xiao Xiaolong's exclamation made Bu Fong speechless. This fellow really liked to watch a good show. Behind the door, Yu Fu swayed her serpentine tail as she walked out. Her pretty face was filled with curiosity. Yu Fu was now the empress of the Serpent Men's city. Her status was high, and her cultivation base was formidable. She was one of the top experts in the entire illusory spirit swamp. Moreover, because the Black Dragon King of the Endless Sea realm had gone to the Heaven Chief realm with Bu Fong, the oceanic species' attitude toward the illusory spirit swamp had improved a lot. That was why the illusory spirit swamp hadn't been invaded by the oceanic species for a long time. That was why Yu Fu had the leisure to leave the illusory spirit swamp's Serpent Men City and come to Fong Fong's little store in the Light Wind Imperial City to help Xiao Xiaolong manage the business and study cooking. It's really Owner Bu. Yu Fu's red lips parted slightly, revealing a look of disbelief. She had thought that ever since Owner Bu had entered the Heaven Chief realm, she would never have the chance to see him again. She had never thought that she would be able to see Owner Bu's face so soon. Was there something wrong with her eyes? Yu Fu rubbed her eyes. After confirming that she wasn't seeing things, her face flushed with excitement. In front of Bu Fong, the dignified empress of the Serpent Men tribe was still the little serpent woman from before. Besides Bu Fong, Xiao Xiaolong's gaze also landed on the others. Whether it was Jing Yuan, Cici, or Niu Han San, who was eating a spirit fruit in the distance, he saw them all. Where was this place? He had such a question in his mind. Squeak. Another door was opened. Behind the door, a burly figure slowly walked out. Behind the burly figure was a seductive figure. These two people were the apprentices of the Cloud Mist restaurant, Yang Meiji and Sorceress in Sheng. As soon as Yang Meiji appeared, her aura suppressed everyone else. Moreover, there was also the extremely gentle and charming Sorceress in Sheng. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Yang Meiji and Sorceress in Sheng were stunned when they saw Bu Fong. The last door was also opened. A carefree and unrestrained figure walked out. He was wearing a chef robe, and his chest was open, revealing his fair skin. Wenren Shang staggered out with a jar of wine in his hand. His body reeked of alcohol. What is this place? Why haven't I seen it before? Wenren Shang looked around in bewilderment. Finally, he fixed his eyes on Bu Fong. Owner Bu, Wenren Shang grinned. I'm getting old. I drank a few too many mouthfuls of wine, and now I'm hallucinating, Wenren Shang said with a smile. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. His apprentices all seemed to have their own personalities. Cici was already watching with great curiosity. Her big eyes were filled with surprise. He didn't expect Teacher Bu to have so many apprentices. All right, wake up, everyone. Let me introduce you, Bu Fong said casually. Her cold voice resounded in everyone's ears. This was the first time Bu Fong's apprentices met. Bu Fong asked them to introduce themselves, such as where they came from. After the introductions, the atmosphere was much more harmonious. Then, Bu Fong introduced the Heaven and Earth farmland to everyone and told them that it would be the place where they would gather in the future to discuss cooking. A place to improve together. The others were stunned. They didn't expect this to happen. In the past, they had to bury themselves in the kitchen to practice cooking, which was boring and inefficient. Now, they could discuss cooking together. This was the best thing Owner Bu had ever done. Cici was the youngest among the apprentices. Bu Fong asked them to talk for a while. Then, he pulled Niu Han San into the wooden house. Niu Han San was very curious about Bu Fong's behavior. He couldn't believe that Bu Fong had so many apprentice chefs under him. How's the fusion of the will of the great path? Bu Fong asked. How can it be so fast? Give this old bull some time. Take it slow. Don't rush. Niu Hansen looked at Bu Fong, smiling. The bull's eyes rolled, winking. Bu Fong was also carefree. He was too impatient. Niu Hansen was right. A hasty man would never get to eat hot tofu. Thus, Bu Fong wasn't too impatient. After talking to Niu Hansen, he left the wooden house. As for these apprentices, Bu Fong took out bursting, pissing meatballs one after another. As for his apprentices, how could they not be able to protect themselves? Bursting meatballs were just right for them. In the Hidden Dragon continent, bursting meatballs were simply earth-shattering weapons. With bursting meatballs, they didn't need to worry about enemies. Even the strongest divine spirit realm expert in the hidden dragon continent would explode instantly when facing bursting meatballs. Of course, the effect on Jing Yuan wasn't so obvious. However, Bufang still gave them to her. As for Cici, Bufang paid special attention to her, giving her a few more. After all, she was still young, and there were so many bad uncles around. If she met Fatty Ding again, Cici could throw a bursting meatball at his fat face. After distributing the bursting meatballs, Bufang asked the apprentices to talk among themselves. Bufang left the heaven and earth farmland. Nowadays, the apprentices could use the transportation door built by the system to travel between the heaven and earth farmland. It was an independent passage that belonged to them. As the master of the heaven and earth farmland, Bufang didn't need the transportation door. However, he could leave first. When the apprentices finished talking, they would return. Time was ticking away slowly. It had been half a year since Mengqi returned to the Heaven Chief realm. Because of the recovery of the Heaven Tree, the whole Heaven Chief realm had undergone earth-shaking changes. The immortal energy was much stronger, and geniuses were constantly born in the Heaven Chief realm. Every day, the Heaven Chief Hall was very lively because geniuses came to take the examination, constantly breaking the previous records of the Heaven Chief realm. The golden age of the Heaven Chief realm had come. Moreover, the relationship between the Heaven Chief realm and the Nether Prison had eased a lot. Nether Prison merchants came and went from the Heaven Chief realm, bringing a lot of good things from the Nether Prison. Many of the Nether Prison's specialties sold very well in the Heaven Chief realm. Meanwhile, the goods from the Heaven Chief realm would be brought back to the Nether Prison by the Nether Prison merchants. Of course, there were also caravans from the Heaven Chief realm that went to the Nether Prison. This kind of exchange allowed the Heaven Chief realm and the Nether Prison to understand each other. It was no longer as tense as before. Realm Lord Dit hadn't returned yet. He had gone to the Abyss for so long, but he still hadn't returned. This was a torture for the many city lords of the Heaven Chief realm. If it weren't for the fact that nothing unusual had happened in the Heaven Chief realm, Mengqi and the others might have already gone to the Abyss. As the Realm Lord of the Heaven Chief realm, Realm Lord Dit was the one who communicated with the Heaven Chief realm. Once he fell, the whole Heaven Chief realm would change. At that time, all kinds of strange phenomena would appear, and the whole Heaven Chief realm would mourn with the world. This was the status of the Realm Lord in the Heaven Chief realm. The Heaven Tree grew more and more luxuriant. The resurrected Heaven Tree was slowly returning to its peak state. The fruits of the Heaven Tree were growing. Now, the fruits of the Heaven Tree were constantly producing good things. The overall strength of the Heaven Chief realm was constantly rising. On this day, outside the Heaven Chief realm, a huge abyssal winged dragon flapped its wings, slowly flying back. Its two pairs of wings flapped, stirring up a gust of wind that seemed to be able to blow everything away. The abyssal winged dragon's eyes were huge, but its intelligence wasn't high. However, it could still be considered a top beast king. When it appeared on the 5th floor of Heaven Chief realm, it attracted the attention of many experts in the Immortal City. The entire Immortal City entered a state of alert, thinking that an enemy attack was about to happen. However, when everyone's nerves were stretched taut, on the back of the abyssal winged dragon, a figure stood up, waving excitedly at them. A moment later, that figure stepped on the abyssal winged dragon's shoulder. Then, he turned into a jet of light, shooting toward the city wall like a cannonball. With a boom, he landed on the wall. The guards were shocked, waving their weapons. However, when the dust settled, a face that everyone was very familiar with was revealed. Realm Lord, Your Highness? It's really the Realm Lord. Realm Lord, Your Highness is back. When the guards saw that person's face, every one of them revealed a look of excitement. Their eyes shone brightly as they looked at the blonde Realm Lord Dit. Dit's face was complicated as he looked at the excited guards on the wall. He had returned from the Divine Chef's remains. His face was unshaven, and he looked much older than before. However, his aura and cultivation base had grown tremendously, and he gave off a completely different feeling. Surrounded by the crowd, Realm Lord Dit had returned to the Heaven Chief Hall. The news of his return spread throughout the entire Heaven Chief realm. The city lords began to move. When Yaya saw the Realm Lord return, her beautiful face burst into tears of joy. She ran over and hugged Dit's body, which seemed to have grown much thicker. In the past, the Realm Lord Dit was handsome, but now he looked much older. It was as if he had turned from a little fresh meat to an uncle. However, this change made Yaya even happier. It was a good thing for the Heaven Chief realm that the Realm Lord had become more mature. Mengqi, the Zhou lords, Gongshu Baiguang, and the others all looked at Realm Lord Dit excitedly. Thank you for your hard work. Realm Lord Dit took a deep breath as he looked at the familiar faces. Your Highness, did you get the Divine Chef's inheritance? Mengqi asked curiously. He had disappeared for almost half a year. Although Bufang kept telling her that the Realm Lord Dit was safe, she was still worried. Now that the Realm Lord had returned, she couldn't help but breathe a long sigh of relief. The others were also curious about Mengqi's question. Realm Lord Dit had a beard around his mouth, which made him look a little sloppy, but it also made him look more experienced. The Divine Chef's inheritance is an opportunity. The Divine Chef I met this time is the top Divine Chef in the Abyss. His inheritance is really complicated. I fought for it with a genius from the Nether Prison Shadow Demon clan, and in the end, we got half of it, and each of us got half of it. Realm Lord Dit said. However, I'm more and more confident about becoming a Divine Chef. As long as I have enough time, I will definitely be able to break through to the Divine Chef realm. Realm Lord Dit said. As soon as he said that, the whole place was quiet for a long time. The next moment, it was completely boiling, the Divine Chef realm. This meant that a real Divine Chef was about to appear in their Heaven Chief realm. After a long chat, Realm Lord Dit said that he was going to the Heaven Chief restaurant. 4 city lords and 1 realm lord walked out of the transportation array and headed toward the Heaven Chief restaurant in the Heaven Chief realm's first layer. From a distance, they saw a long line. On one side of the line, at the entrance of the restaurant, a figure was curled up in a chair, taking a nap with his eyes closed. The warm sunlight sprinkled down and shone on his body. Next to the young man was a black dog, and next to the black dog sat a slender and elegant young lady. She was wearing a long black dress, and her gray-green hair fluttered in the wind. She was also sitting in a chair, swinging her fair legs. The sound of footsteps disturbed Bufang's rest. He slowly opened his eyes and looked into the distance. Then he saw 5 familiar figures. Oh, when he saw the leader, Bufang froze. You're back. Bufang looked at Realm Lord Dit, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly. Realm Lord Dit gave Bufang a deep look, his eyes filled with a complicated look. His performance on the Stairway of Culinary Arts had made him understand how terrifying Bufang was. He had passed the Stairway of Culinary Arts and passed the Culinary Path Life and Death Juncture. All of Bufang's performances showed that if he wanted the Divine Chef's inheritance, it would be a piece of cake for him. However, in the end, Bufang didn't choose it. Instead, he gave the opportunity to him. He had to thank him for this kindness. Therefore, when Realm Lord Dit saw Bufang, he nodded seriously at Bufang. From the look in Realm Lord Dit's eyes, Bufang seemed to understand what he meant. However, he didn't care. He, Bufang, had his own path, and the Divine Chef was far from his destination. By the way, Realm Lord Dit looked at Bufang with a serious look in his eyes. The City Lord and the Great Judge of Abyss City seem to have their eyes on you. You should be careful. They are now independent of Nether Prison and have negotiated with Nether Prison. They are now preparing for the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, so they don't have time to deal with you for the time being. But when they are free, they will definitely come to you again, Realm Lord Dit said. Bufang was slightly taken aback, but soon it didn't matter. He simply nodded indifferently. He had to deal with the situation as it came. He hadn't even gone to the Abyss for trouble yet, and the Abyss was already looking for trouble with him. Also, I want to discuss something with you about the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, Realm Lord Dit said in a deep voice. Bufong frowned and gave Realm Lord Dit a deep look. What's wrong with the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path? What's there to discuss? I'm just the owner of a restaurant. I'm not interested in the affairs of these realms. Bufong said expressionlessly. However, Realm Lord Dit shook his head. No, you will be interested. Chapter 1229. The Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path. Bufong was a little stunned when he heard the name. The current Bufong was no longer a fledgling that had just left the thatched cottage. The Netherworld was a behemoth that included the ruined prison, earth prison, and nether prison. Whether it was the hidden dragon continent where Bufong had stayed before or the Heaven Chief realm where he stayed now, they were both tiny compared to the whole Netherworld. The tournament of the Great Path that Realm Lord Dit mentioned was held by the Netherworld, so its significance was very different. The ruined prison was too weak to be discussed for the time being. Even Earth Prison and Nether Prison were not close enough to hold the tournament of the Great Path together. Back then, Earth Prison's old Hades had joined forces with Earth Prison's army to attack Nether Prison. As a result, there was a fierce battle and countless casualties. They should be considered mortal enemies. So how could they sit down and hold the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path together? The three Netherworlds are a whole and inseparable. Realm Lord Dit said with a wry smile when he saw the doubt in Bufong's eyes. He knew that Bufong would reject the topic as soon as he brought it up. Before this, our Heaven Chief realm was not qualified to participate in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path because Heaven Chief realm was too weak, so we were always excluded. Realm Lord Dit said. Behind him, the other city lords were also listening curiously. However, the whole Netherworld has been in turmoil recently. The Abyss, Earth Prison, and our Heaven Chief realm are all forcing Nether Prison, causing it to gradually fall into a passive position. So, the Nether Prison's tournament of the Great Path has expanded into the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. The main reason for all this was that Nether Prison could not withstand the pressure from the outside world. It was not only the pressure from Earth Prison, the Abyss, and the Heaven Chief realm. As the top of the Netherworld, Nether Prison naturally had to bear a lot of pressure from other places. There were forbidden lands in Nether Prison, and the powers in them were not under its jurisdiction. Whether it was Earth Prison or Nether Prison, the existence of the forbidden lands was like a bone stuck in the throat. It was very difficult and also very scary. Moreover, the Netherworld couldn't be the only land in the vast starry sky. Many people did not know this secret. World Overlord Dit only knew of this secret because he was the overlord of a world. In everyone's eyes, Nether Prison was like heaven and earth, encompassing the entire world. But that was not the case. Since it's a competition held by Nether Prison, why don't you just send a few people back? Is there a need for such a serious discussion? Bufong glanced at Realm Lord Dit. Mengshi and the rest also looked at Realm Lord Dit in confusion. Although the relationship between the Heaven Chief realm and Nether Prison had eased in the past 6 months, it was enough for the Heaven Chief realm to send some people to participate in the competition held by Nether Prison. Why was there a need for such a serious discussion? No, of course it's not just that. This time, Nether Prison has invited the Netherworld, including all the continents and small worlds around it, to compete and rank in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. The higher the ranking, the greater the reward. The reward may even be the irrigation of the Netherworld's will of the Great Path, Realm Lord Dit said. Mengshi and the others sucked in a cold breath. The irrigation of the Netherworld's will of the Great Path? What did that mean? How could such a reward exist? Not even Nether Prison could provide it. There was no doubt that the will of the Great Path had an effect. If it could be irrigated, it could even greatly improve a person's aptitude and make him a saint. The reward was very generous. Bufong's pupils constricted. Just like when the Lord Go bit the will of the Great Path, even at the risk of being seriously injured, this was enough to show the benefits of the will of the Great Path. That was enough to drive everyone crazy. Nether Prison had really come up with a gift that no one could refuse. This news, in fact, it hasn't been announced to the public yet. I learned it from Inya. He is the Nether Prison genius who fought with me for the inheritance in the God of Cooking's remains. but I'm afraid the other worlds will know about this soon. Realm Lord Dit said. In a few days, Nether Prison should send experts to discuss with us. This is actually a good opportunity for the Heaven Chief realm. Meng Qi and the others fell silent. If it was really like what Realm Lord Ditai had said, even if it was just for the reward, they had to send their experts to participate. Of course, if all the continents and small world around them were to participate, in that case, the Heaven Chief realm could not casually send people to participate. Once many small worlds participated, it meant the face of the Heaven Chief realm, and it was also the time to show how strong the Heaven Chief realm was. In the face of Nether Prison, the Heaven Chief realm was still a little weak. But in the face of other planes, the Heaven Chief realm could not be at a disadvantage. It still needed face. That's it. Realm Lord Dit nodded. He thought that the others should understand what he meant. Naturally, Bu Fong understood, but he still said the same thing. What did it have to do with him? Bu Fong was still having a headache recently because he learned from his system that Xiao Bai's repair had been preliminarily completed, but because he lacked the puppet heart of the 3 Revolutions sacred nether puppet, he could not be revived. Meanwhile, Bu Fong was still having a headache about how to get the puppet heart of the 3 Revolutions sacred nether puppet. Now that Realm Lord Dit was talking to him about the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, how could he be interested? Suddenly, Bu Fong seemed to think of something. His eyes lit up, and he turned to look at Realm Lord Dit. Will the 9 clans of Nether Prison participate in this so-called Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path? Will the Nether Puppeteer clan participate as well? Bu Fong asked. That gave Realm Lord Dit pause. The Nether Puppeteer clan was ranked second among the 9 clans of Nether Prison. It was a behemoth. Why would Bu Fong ask such a question? Still, he nodded. Although the specific rules of the tournament haven't come out yet, according to normal circumstances, the Nether Puppeteer clan will definitely participate. Or rather, all 9 clans will participate. The Netherworld's Tournament of the Great Path was originally the Nether Prison's Tournament of the Great Path, and it was originally a venue for the 9 clans. Now that it has been expanded to the whole Netherworld, it is actually still a venue for the 9 clans. Except for the geniuses from Earth Prison who may compete with the 9 clans of Nether Prison, the other small worlds and continents are basically just there to show their faces. Realm Lord Dit said, Nether Prison clearly wants to make this Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path a link to unite the whole Netherworld and the many small worlds around it. It is to unite the forces. Unite the forces? Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. Meng Qi and the others were also lost in thought. The purpose of uniting the forces must be to fight against something. But what else did Nether Prison need to fight against? For a moment, they were a little puzzled. If the Nether Puppeteer clan of Nether Prison is participating, then I agree to participate, Bu Fong said after thinking for a moment. At least in this way, it would be much easier to find the puppet's heart. Realm Lord Dit's eyes lit up, and he nodded. He really didn't expect that Bu Fong would be so easily persuaded. After that, the crowd didn't say anything more. He glanced at the crowded restaurant. After bidding farewell to Bu Fong, Realm Lord Dit left with the few city lords and returned to Heaven Chief Hall. Now, Heaven Chief Hall was the headquarters of the whole Heaven Chief realm. Bu Fong, on the other hand, continued his leisurely life. Time passed day by day. Sure enough, it was as Realm Lord Dit had said. Soon, Nether Prison sent experts into the immortal cooking realm. Driving out from behind the bronze gate, they entered Heaven Chief realm. A huge metal warship floated majestically outside the city gate of the 5th floor of Heaven Chief realm. The terrifying pressure caused the experts above the immortal city to tremble in fear. From the warship, Nether Prison experts walked out and entered the city, discussing something with Realm Lord Dit and the others. After talking for 3 days without rest, the metal warship flew back to Nether Prison. Realm Lord Dit clasped his hands behind his back, standing on the city wall. His robe fluttered in the wind. He stared at the warship that sailed away, his eyes incomparably deep. Night fell. After a busy day, the Heaven Chief restaurant also closed for business. The door of the restaurant was closed. The lights in the kitchen were bright. Waves of fragrance surged out. Bufong walked out of the restaurant with a steaming hot dish. Placing the sweet and sour ribs in front of Lord Go, the latter's eyes lit up. He began to gobble down the food. On the table, dishes were also placed. Cece had worked hard for the whole day, and now she was resting. Eating Bufong's dishes and resting was really an incomparably pleasant thing. Yu, Hua, and the Black Dragon King all reached out their chopsticks, tasting the dishes. The aroma lingered in the restaurant. Sounds of praise rose and fell. Bufong was also eating. After finishing the dishes, everyone went back to rest. Cece excitedly rushed into the kitchen, opened the transportation gate, and stepped into the heaven and earth farmland. It was time to communicate with the other apprentices every day. Cece was incomparably excited about it. Bufong tidied up everything. He was a little speechless. He gently exhaled. It seemed that he really needed to fix Xiao by as soon as possible. Otherwise, there would be many extraordinary things to deal with. His mind flickered. Bufong also entered the heaven and earth farmland. In front of the wooden hut, Niohan-san had been waiting for Bufong for a long time. The will of the great path has finally been merged into the sword feather crane. I can continue the study of the death food tool. Niohan-san was very excited. After more than half a year, he had finally succeeded in merging the will of the great path into the sword feather crane. It was a complicated process. Bufong's eyes brightened. Taking the sword feather crane from Niohan-san, he began to cook in the wooden hut. After more than half a year, he had become much more familiar with the cooking of the sword pot. After a long time, an aroma lingered. In the basin-sized clay pot, there was maroon crane meat. This was the newly completed sword pot. The sharp sword energy lingered, making people feel a surge of sharpness. Of course, after the cooking was done, there was still a difficult task. That was to carve the gourmet array into the sword pot. Only then could the death food tool be considered complete. Buzz and carving the gourmet array was a very complicated process. His spirit sea surged with stormy waves. In front of Bufong, an earthy yellow clay pot floated. The rich aroma lingered, and the sharp sword energy burst out. Its power was very terrifying. Niohan-san had already hidden far away. He had a very accurate understanding of the power of the death food tool. But a pale, white array loomed. After it appeared, Bufong threw it into the clay pot. He had actually completed the process. Bufong was instantly delighted. The array he had fused into was explode, which was the same array as the destructive clay pot. The sword energy in the clay pot became more and more violent, as if it was going to explode at any time. And Bufong did not stop there. After merging a gourmet array, Bufong seemed not very satisfied. His mind flickered. Thousands of light spots gathered. They formed the imprison array. This array also slowly seeped into the clay pot. He's crazy. In the distance, when Niohan-san saw Bufong's action, his face instantly turned pale. He had actually merged two gourmet arrays. This was suicide. One gourmet array was violent and hard to control, let alone two. Was he courting death? Niohan-san's heart trembled, and he hurriedly retreated further. He craned his head, watching Bufong's action. Rumble. There seemed to be a loud explosion. Bufong's face showed a look of excitement. He did not know what would happen if he added two gourmet arrays. He had tried the perishing pot. Once he added the imprison array, it instantly exploded. But the sword pot in front of him was different. It seemed to be able to carry another gourmet array. This gave Bufong confidence. His mental force flowed out like strands, winding around the sword pot. The mental force in his spirit sea quickly poured out, which was not a small burden for Bufong. The entire heaven and earth farmland seemed to be restless. Cece and the others looked over curiously. Buzz, an invisible wave spread, instantly spreading between heaven and earth. Then a dazzling light shone. After a while, it slowly disappeared, and eventually, everything became silent. Bufong looked at the plain clay pot in front of him, his eyes showing a fanatical look. A death food tool that had merged two gourmet arrays. It was done. The crazy sword pot, the death food tool, was completed. Chapter 1230. It was the crazy sword pot, a death food tool. Bufong looked at the earthenware pot in his hand, in which streams of sword energy were swirling. Although it looked ordinary, the murderous aura and power it contained were frightening. Why was it called a crazy sword pot? Because Bufong had frantically fused 2 gourmet arrays into it. The power of the sword pot was extremely terrifying. According to Bufong's estimation, this sword pot would be even more terrifying than the perishing pot. It was one of the most powerful attacks that Bufong could perform so far. Of course, the artifact's spirit possession didn't count. After the artifact's spirit possession, Bufong didn't know how strong Bufong's power would be, but it should reach the level of the little saint. Bufong wasn't sure about this. The artifact's spirits in his spirit sea didn't seem very reliable. Of course, this crazy sword pot also had a shortcoming, which was that it consumed too much mental force. Bufong could feel that this crazy sword pot looked like a bottomless pit. It had an endless demand for his mental force. Bufong didn't know if his mental force was enough to operate this crazy sword pot. One crazy sword pot could even match the mental force of several perishing pots. It was precisely because the demand for mental force was too great that Bufong didn't choose to test the power of this crazy sword pot. Even activating the sword pot would be very strenuous for him, not to mention where to try it. Therefore, Bufong decided to put away the crazy sword pot and let it be covered in dust for the time being. However, Bufong was still very excited to have another lethal means. In the distance, Bufong's apprentice chefs were already stunned by what they saw. Of course, they knew about the death food tool that Bufong had. Whether it was the explosive meatball or the perishing pot, they were unimaginably powerful and thorough means for them. He didn't expect that Bufong had developed a new death food tool. With the death food tool, even a chef would be able to display powerful fighting strength. Bufong let the apprentices continue to communicate with each other. Occasionally, he would give them some pointers and teach them some new knowledge. Although Bufong had taken them in as his apprentices, Bufong had always adhered to the principle that the master led the way, while the cultivation was up to the individual. Bufong would not take the initiative to teach them anything. Only what suited him was the best. Of course, if the apprentices had any questions, they could ask him, and he would solve them one by one. Bufong glanced at the apprentices who were intensely analyzing the problem, and then turned to leave the heaven and earth farmland. He returned to the restaurant. Bufong returned to his room and took a hot bath. He walked out of the bathroom amidst the hot steam. Wearing a bathrobe with his chest exposed, Bufong stretched his body. This kind of leisurely life made Bufong very satisfied. He leaned against the window. Outside the window, he looked at the bright lights and the gentle breeze. With a thought, Bufong took out a blue and white porcelain wine cup. He poured the wine and drank it by himself. When the wine entered his stomach, it warmed his heart. When his wet hair was dry, Bufong climbed onto the bed and slept quietly. It was a quiet night. The next day, the warm sunlight shone through the window, shining on Bufong's face. It was a gentle feeling, as if a small hand was caressing his face. It made Bufong feel a wave of satisfaction. Sitting up on the bed, Bufong rubbed his head, his black hair fluttering. He used a velvet rope to tie his hair. Then he got up, stepped into the bathroom, and began to wash up. He walked out of the room. He happened to see Yu, who had just opened the door. Yu's gray-green hair fell, brushing against her delicate face. The latter raised his head and exchanged a glance with Bufong. After more than half a year of recuperation, Yu's face had become rosy, but it was difficult to change her gray-green hair back. After all, the outbreak of the cursed snake still affected her body. The two of them went downstairs. Bufong turned around and went into the kitchen, while Yu turned around and went into the store. In the kitchen, Cece was already full of energy, learning how to cook. Seeing Bufong come in, she cheerfully smiled and said good morning to Bufong. Bufong nodded. He grabbed the kitchen knife and began to practice his knife skills. Another busy day was about to begin. Oh, Cece's busy day began again. At the entrance of the restaurant, in a chair, Bufong lay back with his head held high. The warm sunlight shone on his body, causing his entire body to emit a lazy aura. In the distance, Realm Lord Dit soon arrived. At this time, there were not many customers in the restaurant. Realm Lord Dit said a few words to Bu Fong, then entered the restaurant and ordered some dishes. Only then did he seriously talk to Bu Fong about business. The so-called business was about the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. A few days ago, the 9 clans of Nether Prison sent people here, and I've confirmed some things with them. Realm Lord D-Tai grabbed a blood lobster and skillfully peeled off its shell. After sucking the juice from the shell, he grabbed the blood lobster with one hand and said to Bu Fong. Bu Fong sat in the chair and looked at him indifferently. Crunch, crunch. The lobster shell was crushed by Realm Lord Dit's teeth, and he concentrated on pulling the shell. By the way, what I want to tell you, Realm Lord Dit said as the glistening lobster meat jumped out of his hand. With a sizzle, it entered his mouth. The tender and smooth texture made Realm Lord D-Tai's face filled with excitement. That's the taste. That little girl Cece's cooking has improved. She's as good as you. Realm Lord Dit said, grinning. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. Get to the point, Bu Fong said. Realm Lord Dit licked his finger that was stained with the spicy red juice. After sucking for a while, he looked at Bu Fong. Nether Prison has confirmed that all 9 clans will participate. However, although they have opened the tournament of the Great Path, they still think highly of themselves, so we won't meet them in the preliminaries and semifinals. We will only meet them in the finals. Of course, we can also meet them in the team competition, said Realm Lord Dit. Bu Fong was puzzled by his words. In addition, Nether Prison has also communicated with the other clans. The first 3 rounds of the preliminaries will be held in Earth Prison. So in the next few days, we will choose the contestants and go to Earth Prison, said Realm Lord Dit. After that, he pulled out another blood lobster and skillfully peeled its shell. With a cracking sound, spicy red gravy flowed out of the shrimp shell. Realm Lord Dit quickly stuck out his tongue. The Nether Puppeteer clan will participate, right? Bu Fong asked the question he was most concerned about. Of course. However, if you want to meet them, you may only have a chance if you make it to the finals in the individual competition or the top 10 in the team competition. Well, I advise you not to do anything to the Nether Puppeteer clan. Among the 9 clans in Nether Prison, except for the strongest D-Ting clan, the Nether Puppeteer clan is the most unfathomable. You'd better not provoke them. Realm Lord Dit said. Bu Fong twitched his mouth. He didn't want to provoke them. He just wanted to borrow the puppet heart of a 3-revolution sacred nether puppet from the Nether Puppeteer clan. Then I'll participate. Tell me the specific time, Bu Fong said. Well, no problem. By the way, Owner Bu, your cultivation base has reached the half-step Saint Realm, but your cooking level is still at the 3rd grade Heaven Chief level. Do you want to try to break through and become a Qilin chef? Realm Lord Dit said as he swallowed a lobster. His oily hands grabbed the glass of wine that Cece had given him and gulped it down in one gulp. After drinking it, he bared his teeth and let out a sigh of admiration. Bu Fong frowned. Break through to Qilin chef? The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. There was no hurry. The systems test for the Little Saint Realm hadn't ended yet. As long as he passed the Little Saint Realm test, Bu Fong would be no different from a Qilin chef. Of course, Bu Fong's cooking level could be compared to ordinary low-grade Qilin chefs. However, it wasn't important. Every time Bu Fong broke through, it was related to the systems test. That was the most important thing. Thus, Bu Fong rejected Realm Lord Dit's good intention. All right, I won't force you. I'm going to find the other contestants. Then, you can form a team and represent the Heaven Chief Realm. Although the Heaven Chief Realm has recovered, it hasn't been developed for a long time. We don't have enough top experts. Facing Earth Prison, Nether Prison, and the Abyss is a little difficult. Realm Lord Dit sighed, feeling a little worried. He finished the last blood lobster, shoving it into his mouth. Then he paid the immortal crystals and swaggered out. Bu Fong looked at Realm Lord Dit's back as he left. He couldn't help but smirk. That fellow didn't look worried at all. As soon as Realm Lord Dit left, Bu Fong leaned on the chair, closing his eyes to rest. A new business day began. More and more people lined up in the restaurant. The warm sunlight made people feel comfortable. Lorgo was lying not far from Bu Fong, also basking in the sunlight. The next day, Bu Fong got up, wearing the striped red and white vermilion robe, walking out of the restaurant. Then, he walked towards the Heaven Chief Hall. Inside the Heaven Chief Hall, it was a boiling cauldron of voices, with people coming and going. Dark clouds continuously gathered above, and thunder and lightning constantly bombarded the sky. It was the result of the Heaven Chief Hall's Heaven Chief test. Today, because of the recovery of the Heaven Tree, the entire Heaven Chief realm's immortal energy level seemed to have risen to another level. Hence, the number of geniuses in the Heaven Chief realm had increased. They were the hopes of the Heaven Chief realm. Bu Fong came to the meeting hall of the Heaven Chief Hall. In the hall, the city lords were sitting solemnly. Realm Lord Dit sat on the high seat, playing with his fingers. When Bu Fong came in, everyone's eyes turned to Bu Fong. "Oh, Owner Bu, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." When the Zhou lords saw Bu Fong, their eyes brightened. Pinching his thumb and middle finger, he said. Meng Qi covered her mouth, smiling. Gong Shu Baiguang cleared his throat. Bu Fong glanced at the Zhou lords with an expressionless face, then found a seat and sat down. It's rare that Owner Bu didn't refuse to participate in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. "Congratulations," Realm Lord Dit said. This time, the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path is divided into individual competitions and team competitions. Our opponents are the Netherworld, the Heaven Chief Realm, and the Abyss, and dozens of small worlds or continents with similar fighting strength. The rewards are very generous and tempting. Most importantly, this is a good experience. If the Heaven Chief Realm wants its descendants to no longer be flowers in a greenhouse, this kind of competition is indispensable. We must let them feel the real experts and the real geniuses. As soon as Realm Lord Dit saw Bu Fong sit down, he began to talk. Bu Fong glanced at him and said, "Speak human language." Realm Lord Dit smiled and said, "I just hope that Owner Bu can take them out to see the world." The participants in this competition were selected after a vote and discussion between the Realm Lord and several city lords. Realm Lord Dit said. Bu Fong frowned. "You don't want to send experts as strong as city lords? An ordinary disciple of the Heaven Chief Realm can't compare to the geniuses of Nether Prison, Earth Prison, and the Abyss. The city lords are very busy. The Heaven Chief Realm is now in the stage of soaring, and there are too many things to do. Naturally, they can't participate in the competition," Realm Lord Dit said with a wry smile. How could he not know what Bu Fong was talking about? "Owner Bu, don't worry. This time, we won't trouble Owner Bu too much. The position of team leader doesn't need to be held by Owner Bu. Owner Bu just needs to take care of those little guys. The main purpose is to let them see the world," Realm Lord Dit said. The contestants this time are 3 people selected from the geniuses of the top aristocratic families in the entire immortal cooking realm. The last one is a genius immortal chef from the first layer of the immortal cooking realm. In just half a year, he became a second-grade immortal chef from a poor family. He's not from an aristocratic family, but Realm Lord Dit still wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by the impatient Bu Fong. Bu Fong felt that after Realm Lord Dit came back from the Abyss this time, his other skills didn't improve, but his ability to be a chatterbox had improved a lot. "All right, let's not talk too much. Now, let's let these young fellows meet Owner Bu," Realm Lord Dit grinned. Then, he raised his hand and clapped. The sound rang out. Then, a series of rustling footsteps rang out. Outside the door, several figures slowly appeared. A hearty and incomparably arrogant voice rang out. "The Great Demon, whose name shakes the entire Heaven Chief Realm. I've long wanted to meet him." Chapter 1231. The Great Demon? I've long wanted to meet him. A clear and bright voice rang out from outside the door. Several figures quickly walked in from outside the door. There were 4 people in total. The 3 in the front were wearing luxurious chef robes, which were edged with gold, looking incomparably luxurious. Behind the three of them was a well-behaved youth. The youth pursed his lips as he looked at the immortal kitchen pavilion with some hope in his eyes. Of course, Bufang heard those words. The arrogance in those words made him a little surprised. Were all young people nowadays so arrogant? Bufang turned his head, looked over his shoulder, and saw the four people. Realm Lord Dit was a little embarrassed. He gave a dry laugh, but his eyes didn't look happy. As for City Lord Zhou and Meng Qi, the awkwardness on their faces became even more intense. Tap, tap, tap. The four of them stepped into the meeting room of the Heaven Chief Hall. Their eyes instantly locked on Bufang. Bufang's face looked about the same size as them. There was nothing special about him. However, Bufang's identity made them not dare to look down on him. The Great Demon. The story of the Great Demon, whose name shook the entire Heaven Chief realm, was like a myth, constantly spreading among the diners in the restaurant. However, that was half a year ago. Today, the Heaven Chief realm had undergone earth-shaking changes. The miracle that the Great Demon had created could be achieved by many geniuses now. Within half a year, many geniuses in the Heaven Chief realm had broken through from the Immortal Chef realm to the third Great Heaven Chief realm. The record that the Great Demon was proud of had long been trampled by them. As for the Great Demon, he had single-handedly repelled thousands of Nether Prison's enemies. They didn't think much of it, thinking that it was just a myth. When a hero's name spreads, his deeds are always easily turned into myths. And the Great Demon was like this. Perhaps the Great Demon in reality was not like this. They had once sneaked into the Great Demon King's restaurant to take a look. The Great Demon did not participate in the cooking of the restaurant. Every day, he would sit in front of the restaurant and lazily bask in the sun. How could such a person be the Great Demon who could repel thousands of enemies all by himself? Zhu Yin narrowed his eyes and stared at Bufang. There was an inexplicable excitement in his heart. It wasn't the excitement of seeing his idol, but he felt that it was time to break a legend. Now, Zhu Yin was also a grade 3 Heaven Chief. He had just made a breakthrough not long ago, and his cultivation was even stronger, reaching the 6-star true immortal realm. This level of talent and cultivation was rare even among the younger generation of the Heaven Chief realm. Beside him were a man and a woman. Like Zhu Yin, the man was Feng Yu, a disciple of an aristocratic family from the 5th floor of Heaven Chief realm. The genius of the Feng family was also a grade 3 Heaven Chief, and his cultivation was also at the 6-star true immortal realm. The woman was Mo Yin, a genius disciple of the Mo family, a top aristocratic family from the 4th floor of the Heaven Chief realm. Her cooking skill was grade 3 Heaven Chief, and her cultivation base was slightly weaker at the 5-star true immortal realm, but it was still not bad. Zhu Yin and the others didn't like the last person. However, the latter was chosen by Realm Lord Ditai and the other big shots. Naturally, he was extraordinary. The last person was from the 1st floor of the Heaven Chief realm, which used to be the most backward place in the Heaven Chief realm. He was not from an aristocratic family, nor was he a disciple of the powerful Heaven Chief realm. He was a commoner. However, he had created a legend as a commoner. He had reached the level of a grade 3 Heaven Chief, and his cultivation base had reached the 6-star true immortal realm. He was called a genius by the 1st floor of the Heaven Chief realm. This person was Xianyuan Xiaohui. Naturally, Bufang also saw Xianyuan Xiaohui, and he slightly froze. He paused for a moment, then nodded at Xianyuan Xiaohui. Xianyuan Xiaohui pursed his lips. He didn't expect to meet Bufang again in such a way. However, he didn't say anything. He knew Bufang's talent and genius best, so he didn't show any arrogance. In front of Bufang, Xianyuan Xiaohui couldn't be arrogant. When he met Bufang for the first time, the latter was not even a Heaven Chief, and he didn't pay immortal crystals for his meals in his restaurant. Now, Bufang had become an existence he looked up to. He could fight against thousands of Nether Prison soldiers alone. He knew that this was not a legend, but a fact. Your Excellency, we're here. Zhu Yin straightened his chest, and a confident smile hung on the corners of his mouth. He first glanced at Bufang, then ignored him, turned to look at Mengqi in the distance and nodded. The aristocratic families in the 5th layer were now in the 3rd layer of the Heaven Chief realm. Therefore, Mengqi was the focus of their attention now. Dit and the others nodded. Zhu Yin, you will be the captain of your team when you go to Earth Prison for the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. Honorable will go with you. Of course, if you encounter any difficulties, you can consult Honorable, Mengqi said. Zhu Yin raised his eyebrows when he heard that. Consult? Why would he need to consult Honorable? With his talent, he was aiming to get into the top 10 in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. If he couldn't even get into the top 10, how would he have the face to face the elders of the Heaven Chief realm? Thank you for your reminder, Your Excellency. I understand. I will definitely lead my team to the top 10. Although he didn't care about it, he still bowed respectfully to Mengqi. Then, he turned to look at Bufang. This must be Owner Bu, the great demon. Nice to meet you, Zhu Yin said with a smile. He held out a hand to Bufang as if he wanted to shake hands with him. Bufang looked at Zhu Yin and felt that the latter was looking at him with a little dissatisfaction. However, Bufang didn't take it seriously. He was a young man, after all, who didn't have some pride. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth and raised his hand to shake Zhu Yan's. However, Zhu Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. The moment Bufang raised his hand, he pulled it back. He turned to look at Mo Yin, who was standing next to him, grinning and talking to her. Bufang's hand froze in place. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Young people nowadays, they're grumpy. Bufang twitched his mouth indifferently. He withdrew his hand and glanced at Zhu Yin. He was too lazy to say anything. In the distance, the eyes of Mengqi and the others changed instantly. They were a little dissatisfied with Zhu Yan's behavior, and they all frowned. They knew very well how strong Bufang was, and how terrifying Bufang's talent was. Although Bufang's cooking skills were only at the 3rd grade Heaven Chief level, the same as Zhu Yin and the others, the dishes Bufang cooked were not inferior to those of Qilin chefs. These were the things that Bufang was hiding. Zhu Yin and the other young man were too arrogant. Mengqi opened her mouth, wanting to scold him. However, he was obstructed by Realm Lord Dit. You'll have to face these things sooner or later. Let them deal with it themselves. Berating them like this will only have the opposite effect, Realm Lord Dit said. However, his gaze fell on Bufang, whose expression was incomparably calm. He also observed a moment of silence for Zhu Yin and the others. Don't seek death. You won't die if you don't seek death. Well, since everyone knows each other, I won't make any introductions. This competition is held by the Netherworld and includes many surrounding worlds. Therefore, this competition is not only to show the strength of our Heaven Chief realm, but also to let the surrounding worlds understand the potential of our Heaven Chief realm. This heavy responsibility falls on your shoulders. Dit said. Bufang was not moved by such sensational words at all. However, Zhu Yin and the others enjoyed it very much. Everyone was so excited that they couldn't help clenching their fists. This kind of thing that represented the honor of a realm seemed to ignite the fire in the hearts of these young men. Bufang glanced at them and twitched the corner of his mouth. They're still too young. Well, Zhu Yin is the leader of this team. If he has anything he doesn't understand or can't solve, he can find Owner Bu. Now, go back and get ready. We'll set out for Earth Prison in the afternoon. We'll see you off in person, Realm Lord Dit said. As soon as his voice rang out, Zhu Yin and the others clenched their fists and growled excitedly. Bufang rolled his eyes, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked out of the conference room of Heaven Chief Hall. Xianyuan Xiaohui and the others, who couldn't fit in with Zhu Yin and the others, quickly followed Bufang. Following behind Bufang, they soon left. In the eyes of Zhu Yin and the others, Xianyuan Xiaohui was a lowly commoner who was lucky enough to participate in this important competition with them. However, because Xianyuan Xiaohui was personally recommended by Gongshu Baiguang, they couldn't expel him. At most, they wouldn't expel him. Instead, they chose to isolate him. Isolating a person was the most terrible thing. Of course, they didn't expect that Xianyuan Xiaohui would be so shameless as to stick to the great demon. The morning didn't last long. Bufong returned to the Heaven Chief restaurant. After giving Cece some instructions, he gave her a few more explosive pissing meatballs and gave them to her to hide. You were called by Bufong to go to Earth Prison together. Now that the curse in Yu's body was in an important stage of being suppressed, Bufong didn't dare to leave her alone in the restaurant. You naturally wouldn't object to this. Wherever Bufong went, she would go as long as there was delicious food. Hua actually wanted to go. She was bored in this restaurant every day and had nothing to do, which made her feel very uncomfortable. However, her proposal was rejected by Bufong. The latter held Yu's body, but Bufong flicked his finger on his forehead. His forehead was slightly swollen. This made Hua angry. She couldn't wait to have a duel with Bufong. Of course, in the end, it didn't have a duel. Bufong took Yu with him, and Little, who was lying on his shoulder leisurely. In half a year's time, Foxy's body had actually grown a lot fatter. The food was really too good. On his buttocks, 2 foxtails kept wagging. Following Bufong, Little whose fox life was good. Bufong took you out of the restaurant and walked slowly toward the square outside the Heaven Chief Hall. Today, the first floor of the Heaven Chief world was the center of the whole Heaven Chief world, the economic center and the commercial center. Many places have been expanded. The Heaven Chief Hall was remodeled, and a huge square was built around the Heaven Chief Hall. It was the largest square in the whole Heaven Chief world. When Bufong and you arrived, Zhu Yin and the others had already packed their luggage and were waiting there for a long time. When he saw Bufong and you beside Bufong, Zhu Yan's eyes suddenly narrowed. Senior the Great Demon, although you're my senior, you still have to abide by the rules. We're going to the competition, not on vacation, so we can't bring others with us. Zhu Yin glanced at you. With her gray-green hair, you looked even more charming and charming. Her beautiful face was a little pale and delicate, which could easily arouse a man's desire to protect her. She had a good figure and straight legs. Every part of her was exuding extreme temptation. Zhu Yin was very amazed. Not only him, but Feng Yu and Mo Yin were also attracted by you. Oh, is there such a rule? Bufong clasped his hands behind his back and gave Zhu Yin a faint look. I'm a captain of a team. I just set this rule to ensure that we won't be distracted during the competition, Zhu Yin said, grinning. His eyes were still glued to Nethery's beautiful face. Of course, he regretted it a little. In order to annoy the great demon, he had rejected such a top beauty. It was indeed a loss of humanity. You set this rule? Bufong raised his brows. Before Bufong could make a move, a cold gleam flashed across Yu's cold face. This man doesn't want me to follow Bufong? His long legs moved, and his grayish-green hair fluttered in the wind. A faint fragrance of a woman filled the air. Zhu Yan's eyes went blank for a moment, and then he found that the breathtakingly beautiful woman had appeared in front of him. In the distance, Meng Qi and the others were slowly approaching. They happened to see you standing in front of Zhu Yan. Then, their pupils constricted. You don't want me to follow Bufong? You said coldly, her face expressionless as she stared at Zhu Yan with her black eyes. Zhu Yan felt a chill run down his spine. As the captain of the team, I have the right. Looking at Yu's beautiful face up close, Zhu Yan almost suffocated. She was so beautiful that even City Lord Mingqi was not as beautiful as her. That kind of ice-cold temperament was really fascinating. However, Zhu Yan still wanted to say it out loud. However, he was only halfway through his sentence. His pupils constricted. Crack. Nethery's pitch-black eyes turned completely black. Blue veins popped out from her eyes, spreading all the way to her ears. The sudden change was extremely terrifying. The corner of Realm Lord Dit's mouth twitched when he saw that. I told you that you won't die if you don't court death. Why doesn't this young man listen to me? Rumble. A gust of wind whistled past Zhu Yan. Zhu Yan felt cold all over, and he couldn't move. A cold hand grabbed his neck and pressed him hard against the wall. The wall crumbled and cracked. Zhu Yan struggled with a look of horror in his eyes. Are you still letting me go with Bufong? She asked faintly, her red lips parting slightly as she pinched Zhu Yan. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Because of the outbreak of the curse, Yu's temper was very bad. After all, She was a woman. There were always more than 30 days in a month when she went berserk. Chapter 1232. Nethery's sudden outburst startled the few people present. Most importantly, Zhuyin was grabbed by the neck and pressed against the wall without being able to resist at all. It should be noted that Zhuyin was a 6-star true immortal realm expert, and he was about to break through to the 7-star true immortal realm. He was so powerful that he was almost invincible among the younger generation. But the breathtakingly beautiful woman had strangled Zhu Yin with just one move. She was so beautiful and young. How could she be so irritable? Zhu Yan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He kept slapping Yu's arm, and when he touched Yu's skin, he felt that it was smooth to the touch. However, at this moment, he didn't have any erotic thoughts. He felt that if this woman wanted to kill him, she wouldn't be joking. She was simply a demoness. You don't want me to follow Bufong? Why don't you let me follow Bufong? Yu said coldly. Her dark eyes glinted coldly as she stared at Zhu Yan. Zhu Yan's face almost turned the color of a pig's liver. Boom! Nethery pressed him against the wall, and the whole wall seemed like it was about to collapse. Zhu Yan was aggrieved. Was this the woman after the great demon was killed? Mother had once said that behind every successful man, there was a woman. These words were not a lie. Go! Let's go! Zhu Yan finally gave in. He spat out these words with difficulty. He felt that if he didn't speak, he might really be strangled to death by this woman. As the leader of the team, if he died before he could even get out of the Heaven Chief boundary, in that case, he might really leave his name in history. Of course, it would be a joke. After getting Zhu Yan's confirmation, only then did the veins on Nethery's eyes disappear, and her pitch-black eyes regained their liveliness. She let go of him. Zhu Yan fell to the ground. His eyes widened, and he covered his throat, coughing. Fang Yu and Mo Yin hurried over and patted Zhu Yan's back to comfort him. In the distance, Dit and the rest also walked over. He gave Zhu Yan a sympathetic look. This guy actually didn't know what was good for him and when to provoke the Netherworld woman. That woman's temper had become quite irritable recently. She didn't even give face to the Lord Realm Lord. Moreover, when they saw the grayish-green hair, they understood that the Netherworld woman's curse wouldn't be suppressed for much longer. Once it exploded, not to mention the Heaven Chief realm, even the entire Netherworld would be plunged into misery and suffering. This bastard actually dared to provoke the Netherworld woman? All right, if you want to tag along, then let her tag along. Even if she doesn't participate in the team competition, it won't affect you much. Realm Lord Dit said. She glanced at Zhu Yan with a faint smile. This young man is so arrogant. It's good for him to be frustrated by you. Taking a deep breath, Zhu Yan felt a little aggrieved, but he couldn't say it out loud. Even Realm Lord Dit was on the Netherworld woman's side. So what else could he do? However, this made him even more determined to achieve a good result in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. He must change everyone's opinion of him. All right, it's time to go. Don't waste time, Bufong said lightly. Realm Lord Dit and the others nodded. Then, with a thought, a spirit boat immediately emerged on the ground of the square. It was a dazzling spirit boat with arrays carved all over it. At first glance, one could tell it was an extraordinary boat. It was slightly smaller than a warship. However, the Heaven Chief realm didn't have a warship, so it could only replace it with a spirit boat. After all, the Heaven Chief realm didn't have a habit of invading other realms, so it didn't build many warships like the Nether Prison. It was not easy to find this spirit boat. When they saw it, Zhu Yan and the others were instantly excited. They were going to battle on a spirit boat. They were going to fight for the Heaven Chief realm. This feeling always inadvertently made their blood boil. As soon as they boarded the spirit boat, they seemed to have a sense of belonging in their hearts. Your Excellency, wait for our good news. We will surely defeat all our enemies and let the name of the Heaven Chief realm spread throughout the whole Netherworld. Zhu Yan said excitedly, clenching his fists. Realm Lord Dit was so embarrassed that he was about to break out. A newborn calf is not afraid of a tiger. Although he was already very optimistic about the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, the Heaven Chief realm had just recovered its strength and was in the early stages of soaring. They were the only young geniuses who could be sent to participate in the tournament. For the geniuses of the Netherworld, six-star true immortals were no different from ants. Whether it was Earth Prison or Nether Prison, they could basically crush them. Swoosh! Realm Lord did only hope that they wouldn't lose too badly. After all, he just wanted them to go out and see the world. The geniuses of any of the 9 groups in Nether Prison were strong enough to kill Zhu Yin and the others. After all, they were the foundation of Nether Prison. At the thought of this, Realm Lord Dit thought it was better not to dampen their enthusiasm, so he put on a gentle smile. Well, just do your best and go with a learning attitude. Every opponent is worth learning from. Also, if you have any difficulties or questions, you can consult Owner Bu. Realm Lord Dit emphasized again. Bu Fong was very talented, at least not weaker than those geniuses of the Netherworld. If they knew how to surround Bu Fong, they might be able to see the scenery from a higher place. Realm Lord Dit's words made Zhu Yin and the others unhappy. He was just a has-been the great demon. Although the people of their aristocratic families had told them before they left not to offend the great demon, they naturally had their own pride. However, as monstrous geniuses, they naturally had their own pride. A has-been the great demon was not worthy of their fear. If the great demon were a Qilin chef, they might respect him. However, in the 6 months that the Heaven Chief realm had been soaring, the great demon's strength and cooking skills had not improved at all. He was still a 3rd grade Heaven Chief, the same level as them. They were all at the same level. What was there to be proud of? It should be noted that in the past 6 months, the Heaven Chief realm had several new Qilin chefs. Almost all of their aristocratic families had Qilin chefs. Would a Qilin chef be afraid of a 3rd grade Heaven Chief? Ridiculous. Bu Fong naturally didn't bother to explain. He didn't care about these little fellows at all. Well, let's go now. Realm Lord Dit glanced at the people standing on the spirit boat, sighed with emotion, and said, Nether Prison was going to fuse with the land of the Netherworld, which was a major trend. Even a Heaven Chief realm couldn't stay out of it. Since that was the case, they had to work hard to fuse. At least, they had to let the Heaven Chief realm occupy a position in this trend. He thought of the time when he left the Divine Chef's inheritance. Hearing Ingya's words, his eyes turned solemn. The immortal cooking realm also needed to seize the opportunity in the coming general trend. The spirit boat slowly rose into the sky, and a stream of light spread out from the spirit boat. Very quickly, the entire spirit boat burst forth with speed, instantly turning into a streak of light, disappearing into the horizon. Around the square, groups of people had already surrounded it. Zhu Yin and the others were the new geniuses of the Heaven Chief realm in the past 6 months, so they were naturally familiar with them. Moreover, the name of Bu Fong, the great demon, was well known throughout the Heaven Chief realm. They were going to represent the Heaven Chief realm in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, which was a big event. It concerned the honor of the Heaven Chief realm, so how could they not pay attention to it? It's time for you guys to go out and see the world. There will be more activities like this in the future. If you don't want to be flowers in a greenhouse, you have to go through more trials. While Owner Bu is away, we have to work hard to improve our cultivation bases. Now that the Heaven Chief realm is developing rapidly and its resources are soaring, everyone has a chance to break through to a higher realm. So, when Owner Bu returns next time, we'd better make some breakthroughs, Realm Lord Dit said, looking at Mengqi and the others. His face suddenly grew serious. Mengqi and the others nodded. Starting today, I'll go into seclusion until I become a divine chef. In addition, the Nether Prison experts will set up a projection array in the Heaven Chief realm to show the competition. Mengqi, please arrange for the Nether Prison experts to show the competition directly in the squares of the immortal cities. It's time to let the people of the Heaven Chief realm understand the powerful and cruel Netherworld. Realm Lord Dit said. Mengqi nodded. Can I show the competition in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path? That way, I should be able to see the competition between Bu Fong and the others. That's not bad. The spirit boat streaked across the sky. Bu Fong stood at the front of the deck with his hands clasped behind his back. A gust of wind blew. It was weakened by the array, but there was still a slight breeze blowing over, stirring Bu Fong's hair and his vermilion robe. You stood at Bu Fong's side. There was a hint of disdain on her face. This spirit boat is not as good as my netherworld ship. You said seriously. The netherworld ship was specially made for you by old Hades, so it's naturally a treasure. How can this spirit boat compare to your netherworld ship? Bu Fong said. You nodded with a little pride on her face. Her netherworld ship was invincible. Inside the cabin, Zhu Yin and the others looked at Bu Fong and you from a distance. Xin Yuan Xiaoe, on the other hand, sat quietly in a corner with her eyes closed, meditating and seizing the time to cultivate. You come here. Bu Fong suddenly thought of something. He turned to look at you and said. You paused, but she didn't say anything. She strode to Bu Fong's side. If you leaped into the air, she would be half a head shorter than Bu Fong. Her head would be right at Bu Fong's nose. Come closer, Bu Fong said, his face expressionless. Nethery's pitch-black eyes looked at Bu Fong. She softly said, oh. Then, she leaned forward and moved her head toward Bu Fong. In the cabin, Zhu Yin and the others' eyes almost popped out. These two shameless men and women, in broad daylight, heaven and earth. How could they? The legendary great demon is nothing more than this. He can also be swayed by beauty. And Mo Yin was very beautiful. As the proud daughter of an aristocratic family, she had her own pride, but in front of you, she only felt inferior. Fong Yu didn't say anything. He just blinked and watched curiously. Nethery moved her head closer to his. Bu Fong reached out his hand. An array flashed on his finger, and then he pointed it between Yu's eyebrows. Zhu Yin and the others also stared at her. What kind of special hobby is this? It feels like he's spoiling her. Under normal circumstances, shouldn't he have more intimate contact with her? The three of them just wanted to watch the show. Boom! Suddenly, the three of them felt a chill run down their spines. As they stared at you, they suddenly found that when the great demon's finger touched Yu's forehead, Yu's body burst into a dazzling light. A cold and gloomy aura instantly enveloped their bodies, almost suffocating them. Hiss! Then, there was only a jade-green color left in their eyes. It was a long, ferocious green snake. It was so terrible that it seemed to devour their minds. How horrible! Looking at the cursed snake, which seemed to have grown a little stronger, Bu Fong furrowed his brows. He loosened his hand, took out the black turtle constellation wok, and began to cook on the spirit boat. He could only use dishes to suppress the cursed snake. However, he had a feeling that the cursed snake was slowly developing a resistance to the dish. That would be a little difficult. Bu Fong withdrew his hand and began to cook. You stood obediently to one side, cocked her head slightly, and glanced coldly at the three people in the cabin. That made the three of them tremble, and they were drenched in sweat. They turned their eyes away, sat cross-legged, calmed their minds, and began to cultivate. Of course, all that was left in their hearts was fear. That jade-green snake was like a nightmare that shrouded their hearts. Swish! The spirit boat tore the sky, moving faster and faster. It broke through the void and began to jump. After a long time, after the jump, it shuttled through the boundless void. It sped toward Earth Prison of the Netherworld. As soon as it entered Earth Prison, sonic booms rang out one after another. Rumbling filled the air. One warship after another stretched across the sky. They surrounded the small spirit boat. Chapter 1233. One warship after another sped through the boundless void. Their speed was amazing, and they were accompanied by violent rumbling sounds. Each warship was made of solid or in metal, and they looked ferocious and ferocious. These were the warships from the surrounding worlds that were participating in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. With the Netherworld as the center, there were many worlds around it. There were dozens of worlds that could participate in the tournament. Among them, the more outstanding ones were the Wingman Valley, the West Little Buddhism Realm, and so on. There were many great sage experts in these small worlds, as well as top great sage experts. Naturally, they were extraordinary. When the Heaven Chief realm was in its heyday, the Heaven Tree was actually a top great sage. Unfortunately, the realm had experienced a decline, and the Heaven Tree was in the recovery stage. It was still a long way from being a top great sage. These small worlds were all around the Netherworld, and they had their own strengths that were not weaker than the Netherworld. But in fact, the Netherworld was guarded by the 9 clans, which were slightly weaker than them. So, these small worlds gave them face. Otherwise, given Nether Prison's bad temper, it might have attacked them with its warships. Now, Nether Prison was much more relaxed. When it was at its peak, its warships had attacked almost all the small worlds around the Netherworld, trying to unify the whole area and create the great Netherworld. Unfortunately, that was many years ago when it was in its heyday. Now, it was plagued by internal and external troubles, and it was no longer as brave as before. However, a lean camel was still bigger than a horse, and it was still not something these small worlds could deal with. Swoosh! The warships tore through the void. The array rotated at high speed, producing a rumbling sound like thunder. Zhu Yin and the others, who were cultivating cross-legged in the spirit boat, were startled awake. They opened their eyes in shock. They walked out of the cabin and saw Bu Fong and Yu, who were sitting on the deck and eating. Why were they still eating? They had been eating all the way here. Because the cabin was sealed, they couldn't smell the aroma of the dishes. Otherwise, they would be shrouded in the temptation of the aroma and wouldn't be able to cultivate. Taking a deep breath, the aroma of the dish was like a small snake drilling into their mouths and nostrils, causing their minds to be moved. "It smells so good," Mo Yin exclaimed in admiration. You glanced at Mo Yin, and her eyes suddenly became sharp. Her hands moved faster, picking up the remaining pieces of meat and stuffing them into her mouth. Her cheeks immediately puffed up as she stared at Mo Yin and said, "No more." Mo Yin and the others were speechless. Did they look like the kind of people who would snatch food? Rumble. Immersed in the fragrance, they were once again shocked by the rumbling sound. Turning his head to look at the 2 sides, he was instantly dumbfounded. The warships on both sides were incomparably tall, and the spirit boat looked extremely small in front of these warships. When they raised their heads and looked up, they almost couldn't see the end of the walls of the warship. This is a warship." Zhu Yin swallowed his saliva and sucked in a breath of cold air. He had never seen such a huge warship before. It looked like a prehistoric behemoth. On the warship, someone leaned against the deck and looked down. "Yo-ho! Which small world is this little boat from? Is it a joke?" The people on the warship chuckled. Their words were filled with undisguised contempt. On the other side, there was another warship, which was also incomparably tall and emanated a terrible pressure that made Zhu Yin and the others a little breathless. "It seems to be from the Heaven Chief realm. I heard that the fallen Heaven Chief realm has recovered and actually resisted the Nether Prison's invasion. Now it seems that it's just so-so. It doesn't even have a warship." On this warship, someone also leaned against the railing and looked down. The people on the warship looked at the spirit boat as if it was a joke. They all sneered. The faces of Zhu Yin and the others were flushed with embarrassment. Damn it, these arrogant people. Bu Fong, on the other hand, was very calm. "Where are these people from?" Bu Fong asked curiously while stuffing meat into his mouth and chewing at the same time. Yu, cheeks puffed, glanced at the warship and said in a muffled voice, "The one on the left is from the Wandering Soul Realm. It's a small world that specializes in cultivating souls. It was almost captured by the Nether Prison. Later, the Great Sage luckily broke through to the level of a top Great Sage, and only then was it able to resist the Nether Prison's invasion. The one on the right is the Vajrar Realm. It's a world of experts who specialize in cultivating fleshly bodies. You had stayed in Earth Prison, so you understand this better. The Nether Prison's invasion policy is not to invade small worlds with a top Great Sage. You know more about small worlds with a top Great Sage." Zhu Yin and the others did not know this, and they all sucked in a cold breath. They did not know what level a top great sage was at. However, they knew that even the realm lord of the Heaven Chief realm, Dit, was only at the level of a little saint. The great sage is almost at the level of the heaven tree. Bufang glanced at Zhu Yin and explained, "The heaven tree? Isn't that the symbol of the Heaven Chief realm? When a heaven tree dies, the Heaven Chief realm dies, and when the heaven tree prospers, the Heaven Chief realm prospers." Was the top great sage comparable to the heaven tree? After watching the show for a while, the warship's arrays rumbled, and it flew away in a flash. It sped away in an instant. Only a trail of light was left behind, leaving a trail of dust in the air. Zhu Yin and the others felt very aggrieved. They could feel the contempt in the eyes of the people on the warship. However, they were powerless to fight back. It's okay. Just because our hardware is backward doesn't mean our strength is backward. When we get to Earth Prison, we'll prove the strength of the Heaven Chief realm with our strength. Zhu Yin comforted Mo Yin and the others. As the leader of the team, he felt it was his duty. Mo Yin and Fang Yu nodded hurriedly. Bufang glanced at them and sighed with emotion in his heart. They are really young. However, he didn't say anything to discourage them. It was good to be motivated. He was afraid that they would be discouraged before they reached Earth Prison. Boom! Zhu Yin, who was clenching his fists, felt that everyone's willpower was much stronger, and a smile bloomed on his face. However, with a rumble, a warship sped past them from the side, kicking up a cloud of dust. The impact of the blast made the spirit boat sway. This caused their expressions to turn even uglier. Damn it! Do these people know how to drive a ship? Can't they see our spirit boat? Are they blind? Zhu Yin roared. Swish! 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 Warships of various colors sped past them and overtook them. Some of the warships even let out shrill roars, sneering and making contemptuous gestures at them. Zhu Yin was furious. He lay on the edge of the spirit boat and roared back at them. Sizzle! Bufang and you looked at Zhu Yin and the others and couldn't help but shake their heads. Young, in front of Bufang and you was a grill, on which pieces of fat meat were sizzling with oil and fragrance. During the leisure time on the spirit boat, barbecuing was the most enjoyable thing. The aroma wafted toward them. Zhu Yin and the others, who had been shouting until their mouths were dry, suddenly felt hungry. They swallowed and glanced at the oily barbecued meat. Then they also propped up the grill and began to grill meat like Bufang. Time passed. After 2 days and 2 nights of travel, the spirit boat finally approached Earth Prison. Buzz, it broke through the barrier of Earth Prison. Instantly, the entire spirit boat began to sway. The next moment, it turned into a stream of light and sped across the sky. The sky was clear and the land was vast. The people on the spirit boat were amazed by the vastness of Earth Prison. Bufang stood on the deck with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the boundless Earth Prison without batting an eyelid. There was a look of excitement in Nethery's black eyes. After all, strictly speaking, Earth Prison was her home. Zhu Yin and the others had never seen the world, so they marveled at the richness of Earth Prison's spiritual energy, the vastness of the land, and the endless number of strange plants. Even Xin Yuan Xiaohui, who had been cultivating in the spirit boat, walked out of the cabin, took a deep breath, and felt the majesty of Earth Prison. Boom, boom, boom. Rumbling sounds rang out one after another. Everyone looked over their shoulders. They immediately saw one warship after another crash into the barrier of Earth Prison. Then, they emerged from the barrier. Pressure spread in all directions. Buzz suddenly in the sky. A rumbling sound exploded. A majestic pitch-black metal warship slowly sailed over and hovered in front of the spirit boat. Zhu Yin hurriedly stopped the spirit boat. Tap, tap. On the warship in front of them, a figure slowly appeared on the deck. She looked down at the whole spirit boat. It was a beautiful woman with a heroic spirit. She was wearing a black armor that glowed with colorful light and exuded a majestic aura. The woman waved at the spirit boat. Immediately, the whole spirit boat soared into the sky and landed on the warship. Zhu Yin and the others took a deep breath. This warship must be the guide warship of Earth Prison. They walked out of the warship. He immediately saw the appearance of the woman in black armor, who exuded a heroic aura. When they saw her clearly, they couldn't help but gasp. What the F***CK? What's going on? Zhu Yin and the others widened their eyes. They looked at the guide of Earth Prison, then at you. Why do these two look so similar? Looking at the woman, Bufang couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He didn't expect that it would be this woman who came. She must have learned that you had also come to Earth Prison. Carrying a heavy sword on her back, Yuji's face was full of heroic spirit. She glanced at the crowd and finally fixed her eyes on you. When she saw Yu's gray-green hair, her pupils shrank. What happened to your hair? Did the curse break out? Yu Chi took a deep breath, and her figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. When she reappeared, she was already at Yu's side. Yu Ji raised a trembling hand and brushed Yu's gray-green hair. Her eyes suddenly became sharp. The next moment, the heavy sword on her back burst out. A horrible sound rang out. The sword swept toward Bufang. Zhu Yin and the others' faces changed dramatically, and they trembled all over. The pressure emitted by this woman made them not even dare to move. Her aura was too terrible. She seemed to be even scarier than the Realm Lord. Who is this woman? Bufang's expression did not change. He stood where he was with his hands clasped behind his back. The heavy sword swept over and suddenly stopped an inch away from the tip of Bufang's nose. The sharp sword energy caused Bufang's hair to flutter. You took Yuji's hand, frowned, and kept shaking her head. Sister, it's not Bufang's fault. You said, I asked him to take good care of you. But he failed, Yuji said coldly. The curse has been suppressed. It's fine now, Yuji said coldly. The curse has been suppressed. It's all right now. She gave you a deep look, then glanced at Bufang. Only then did she withdraw her aura and put the heavy sword back on her back. You are sent by the Heaven Chief Realm to participate in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path, aren't you? I'm the guide responsible for guiding you to the arena. I'm Yuji, one of the Earth Prison Overlords, she said lightly, glancing at Zhu Yin and the others. So weak. After the introduction, she said nothing more. Zhu Yin and the others nodded, trembling. The Earth Prison Overlords were so domineering. The next moment, Yuji took a step forward. She turned into a beam of black light and rushed out, hovering in the sky and facing the warships that had broken through the barrier and entered Earth Prison. All warships follow the Earth Prison's guide warships. Kill anyone who dares to cause trouble, Yuji said coldly. As soon as her voice rang out, the heavy sword on her back fell into her hand. She raised it, and a terrible sword energy erupted from her body. Then, one aura after another rose from the warships, contending with Yuji's aura. Yuji focused her eyes. The edgeless heavy sword swept down. The sword energy blotted out the sky and smashed toward the warships. Someone in the warships attacked. After fighting for a while, the sound of someone coughing up blood rang out. After that, all the warships became obedient. Yuji returned to the warships, her face cold. The Earth Prison warships rumbled and sailed across the void. Inside the warships, Zhu Yin and the others had long admired Yuji. This was the attitude of an expert. Of course, they were also very curious about the relationship between Yuji, Bufang, and Yu. At this moment, in their eyes, the so-called Great Demon had become a weak man who relied on a woman. If it weren't for you, the Great Demon would have been cut in half by this Earth Prison Overlord. The so-called Great Demon was nothing more than this. Earth Prison's warships flew at a much faster speed than the spirit ships. After flying for a long time, after crossing hundreds of thousands of miles, the warships finally stopped. The sound of a surging river echoed through the void like the roar of a beast. Zhu Yin and the others lay prone on the warships and looked down. He saw a roaring river flowing with blood. In the river, there were white skulls and countless remnant souls wailing in anguish. The river made their hearts tremble. They felt as if their souls were about to be sucked into it, and they were shrouded in fear. Earth Prison was indeed terrible. Even a river was so frightening. The river seemed to be bleeding, shrouded in death and filled with destruction. The venue for the preliminary round of the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path was this bleeding river. Chapter 1234. The bleeding river was called the Acheron River. Bufong was no stranger to the Acheron River. He had been here once. At that time, he was still very weak and did not know how powerful the Acheron River was. Today, Bufong's knowledge was extraordinary. Looking down from the warship in the sky, he could see the horror of the Acheron River. The Acheron River surged. Dried bones flowed in the river, and remnant souls roared, bringing with them a frightening will. However, what Bufong could not forget was the Acheron grass by the Acheron River, and the senseless lotus floating on the Acheron River. He used to brew the Acheron helplessness wine, which was made with the Acheron grass and the flower of helplessness as the main ingredients. On the day it was opened, the fragrance of the wine filled the entire valley of gluttony. At that time, he only used the one-leaf Acheron grass and the ordinary flower of helplessness. If he could use the 9-leaf Acheron grass to brew the Acheron helplessness wine, it could even surpass the 3 great wines of the abyss. However, Bufong just thought about it. After all, the 9-leaf Acheron grass was the treasure of the great sage Acheron. It was an existence that even the Lord Go was afraid of. Before, Bufong did not know how strong the great sage Acheron was. He did not have an intuitive idea. However, now he was very clear that the great sage Acheron was not weaker than the Lord Go. Even the woman in the God-vanishing mountain was very afraid of the great sage Acheron. Although the Acheron River was not a forbidden land, because of the existence of the great sage Acheron, it could be compared to a forbidden land. In the Acheron Valley, there was a fierce spirit beast, the blood-illuminating dragon. The venue for the competition this time was actually here. The great sage Acheron agreed. Fortunately, the venue was not set at the source of the Acheron River, but at the middle and lower reaches of the river. The Acheron River here was not that scary. Bufong recalled his experience on the Acheron River. The bridge of helplessness on the Acheron River, the boat of rebirth, and the soul fisherman. They were all very mysterious. In fact, the Acheron River was not inferior to the Forbidden Land. Rumbling sounds resounded endlessly. The warship quickly descended to the ground. Below, there was a huge city. The city was built on the middle and lower reaches of the Acheron and was very bold. Perhaps this was also the reason why the Acheron River had not become a forbidden area. The main reason was that the Acheron River was too long. It ran through the entire infernal realm. Moreover, the Acheron River was much milder than the Forbidden Lands. Back then, Bufong had directly landed at the source. It was still a long way from here, so he did not discover the city. This is Forbidden Soul City, the venue of the preliminary competition. Enter the city, register, and someone will take you to your accommodation. Yuji, carrying a heavy sword on her back, glanced at Bufong and said. Then, she ignored Zhu Yin and the others and asked them to disembark. Boom, boom. The 6 of them landed one after another. You followed Bufong. They stood outside the city gate. In the sky, warships hovered and stopped in the distance, giving them a majestic feeling. The towering city gate was built with blood-red bricks and looked awe-inspiring. The city gate was arched, and there were hell guards dressed in black armor blocking the way. Zhu Yin and the others took a deep breath. At last, they arrived at the venue of the competition. Bufong glanced at Forbidden Soul City. It was a magnificent city with a terrible aura. Obviously, it was guarded by experts. In front of the gate, people came and went, and people of all kinds entered the city. I've heard of Forbidden Soul City, but I've never been here, you said. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. They didn't stop for long. Zhu Yin and the others had already taken the lead and walked into the distance. When they arrived at the city gate, they were stopped. Many people's eyes fell on Zhu Yin and the others. Many people sneered. mainly because Zhu Yin and the others' cultivation bases were too weak. They were only 6-star true immortals. The weakest of the contestants was a 9-star true immortal, and some were even half-step saints. The contestants from some stronger small worlds were all one revolution little saints. Relatively speaking, 6-star true immortals were extremely weak. Zhu Yin and the others were full of confidence when they participated in the Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path. But when they sensed the auras of the contestants from other small worlds, their expressions changed. They had long since lost their previous complacency. They found that the auras and cultivation bases of almost all the contestants from other small worlds seemed to be stronger than theirs. This was very unreasonable. The gazes of mockery and predatory gazes made them feel very uneasy. Bu Fong followed behind them, his expression as calm as ever. When Zhu Yin and the others saw Bu Fong's calm expression, they began to admire Bu Fong's mental fortitude. After all, as far as they knew, Bu Fong's cultivation base seemed to be not much weaker than theirs. Boom, boom, boom. The ground trembled. Behind Zhu Yin and the others came a group of burly bald men with an average height of more than 2.5 meters. These people were bare-chested. Their upper bodies were covered with dragon-like muscles. Their bronze-colored skin seemed to reflect the brilliance of steel. Yo, we meet again, little weaklings from the Heaven Chief realm. The leader of the group, a burly bald man, spoke. His voice rang out like a copper bell, shaking the crowd's ears. As he walked, the ground seemed to tremble. Zhu Yin and the others widened their eyes as they recalled Yu's introduction. These burly men should be experts from the Vajra region. A look of anger appeared on Zhu Yan's face. He could ignore the sarcastic gazes around him, but this burly man's direct taunts made him a little angry. Boom, boom. The ground seemed to have caved in. These burly men walked over, leaving footprints on the ground. The eyes of their leader seemed to be bursting with cold mockery. So you're the leader of your Heaven Chief Realm team? You're simply as weak as an ant. I can crush you to death with one finger. The burly man grinned and said. Zhu Yin glared at the burly man. His chest was burning with anger. Ant, I like to see how strong you are. Zhu Yin couldn't see through the burly man's cultivation base, but it didn't stop him from getting angry. Perhaps this burly man was only a little stronger than him. If it was only a little, Zhu Yin might still have a chance. After all, his family had prepared a lot of treasures for him before he left. Yo, do you want to die? The burly man narrowed his eyes and laughed sarcastically. The Heaven Chief realm was indeed strong when it was at its peak, but now it was very weak. Hurry up and get into the city. If there's a conflict, settle it in the competition. Don't block the way. The cold voice of the gate guard rang out. Zhu Yin froze and gritted his teeth. The burly man grinned. He didn't care about Zhu Yin and the others, but he didn't dare to make trouble in Earth Prison. The woman from Earth Prison had suppressed an expert from the neighboring warship with one sword strike. That kind of strength was enough to show how strong Earth Prison was. The Vajra realm couldn't compare to Earth Prison. Don't let me meet you in the arena, or I'll kill you with one finger. The burly man sneered. Then, he strode into Forbidden Soul City. Zhu Yan's face turned as red as a pig's liver, but he felt powerless. When he was in the Heaven Chief realm, he was complacent and confident. But when he stepped into Earth Prison, he realized that his cultivation base was nothing at all. Don't be discouraged, Brother Zhu. We're competing with the Heaven Chief realm. If we let them compete with us in cooking, we'll definitely beat them. Mo Yin looked at the sullen Zhu Yin and comforted him. Zhu Yin nodded seriously. Then, the three of them stepped into the city. Bu Fong was speechless as he listened to their conversation. If they wanted to compete in cooking, why would they come to Earth Prison? Were they out of their minds? The Netherworld's tournament of the Great Path this time was a competition of cultivation base and fighting prowess. These little fellows from the Heaven Chief realm were still too young and inexperienced. But it didn't matter. They still had a lot of time, and they would grow. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bu Fong walked toward the city with you. Xianyuan Xiaohui followed at Bu Fong's side. He knew very well that following Bufang was much better than following the arrogant Zhu Yan. Zhu Yan was just a spoiled son of an aristocratic family. Outside the Heaven Chief realm, he was nothing. Forbidden Soul City was very large. Among them, there were inns specially arranged for contestants from different worlds to stay. All the contestants from different small worlds stayed here. Bufang soon found his room. Suddenly, he froze because the competition staff had only prepared one room for him. Glancing at you, who was blinking at him behind him, Bufang rubbed his head. As time went by, the atmosphere of the competition grew stronger and stronger. In addition to the natives of Earth Prison, there were more contestants from other small worlds in Forbidden Soul City. After all, it was a competition held by Nether Prison, so they naturally had to come. Besides, the competition was of great significance. The ranking in it could reflect the overall strength of their small worlds. This was very important. On the first day Bufang and the others arrived, there was no competition. Everyone was resting. Various competition venues had been built in Forbidden Soul City. Of course, there were projection arrays. This was so that all the small worlds could see the competition. On the second day, the competition officially began. On this day, all the contestants from the small worlds had to go to the square in Forbidden Soul City, where many arenas have been set up. Today, they would draw lots for the team competition and the individual competition. There were too many people participating in this competition. The preliminary round would go through several rounds, during which anyone who failed would be eliminated. Knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Bufang, who was sitting in the center of the room with you and grilling meat, rose to his feet and opened the door. As soon as the door opened, a fragrant aroma wafted out. The crowd outside the door was dumbfounded. When the door opened, Bufang saw Mo Yin and Fang Yu, while Zhu Yin, who had been very active before, was hiding in the back. That made Bufang a little strange. What's wrong? Bufang said lightly. Fang Yu and the others were speechless when they smelled the aroma in the air. A man and a woman were in the same room, and they were grilling meat. The great demon was really a weirdo. We're going to draw lots today, and we asked you to come with us. Mo Yin said. Bufang nodded. He narrowed his eyes, looked at Zhu Yin, who was hiding in the distance, and raised his eyebrows. What's wrong with him? Mo Yin paused. Then her face became a little strange and embarrassed. Ahem. Mo Yin didn't know what to say, and Fang Yu was speechless. He was beaten up. Xinyuan Xiaohui said naturally. His relationship with Zhu Yin wasn't very good, so he didn't feel any burden to say it out loud. You, Zhu Yin growled as if he was a little angry. Bufang raised his hand and motioned for Fang Yu and Mo Yin to move to the side. Then, Zhu Yin, who had been hiding behind them, poked his head out. When he saw, the corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. How badly did Zhu Yin get beaten up? His whole face was twisted, bruised, and swollen, and there were streaks of blood spreading from the swelling. The opponent's control of power was very delicate. His power had penetrated the wound and kept flowing through it, making it impossible for Zhu Yan's power to heal the wound, which kept his bruised and swollen face. From the outside, it was really hard to tell what Zhu Yan looked like. He really got beaten up? Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. Zhu Yan felt wronged. He had always been unconvinced by the great demon, and now that the great demon had seen his disgraceful performance, he was very angry. Immediately, he felt a little resentful toward Xinyuan Xiaohui. In the distance, the door of the room opened. A creaking sound rang out. One burly figure after another came out of the room. It was a group of people from the Vajra realm. Coincidentally, the group of people from the Vajra realm actually lived opposite them. When a group of burly men from the Vajra realm appeared and saw Zhu Yan's miserable condition, they burst out laughing mercilessly. Their laughter was full of contempt. Little trash, do you feel good being beaten up? Chapter 1235. Does it feel good to be trampled? A mocking voice rang out. The burly Vajra realm man looked contemptuously at Zhu Yan, whose face was bruised and swollen. The sneer in his eyes was not concealed at all. Zhu Yin trembled with anger, but at the same time, he felt a wave of powerlessness. He was helpless and desperate. He was considered a genius in the Heaven Chief realm, but when he came here and met a real genius, he was nothing at all. His opponent was a genius from the Vajra realm. His fleshly body was so strong that he could resist knives and swords with it. All his attacks hit the burly man, but they had no effect at all. So he was beaten hard. His face was bruised and swollen, and he couldn't resist at all. It was like a nightmarish memory, causing his entire body to tremble. Mo Yin and the others were also a little helpless. They had even lost all hope. After staying in Forbidden Soul City for a day, they had also seen the monstrous geniuses from various worlds. They thought they were strong and monstrous enough, but when they really met the experts and geniuses from other worlds, they realized how small they were. They were too naive and young in the past. When they thought of what they had boasted in front of Realm Lord did, they felt their faces burning. When they thought of how ignorant they were, they realized how stupid they were. The burly Vajra realm men laughed contemptuously. They glanced at Bufang, then at Zhu Yin, and their laughter grew louder. Many people in the surroundings shot their gazes over, watching curiously. Many people recognized Zhu Yin and the others. The Heaven Chief realm was somewhat famous in the surrounding great worlds. After all, Heaven Chief realm used to be as powerful as Nether Prison. Of course, the Heaven Chief realm had declined today. Oh, it turns out that you're the contestants from the Heaven Chief realm. You're a little weak, someone from another small world said disdainfully with a faint smile. Then a deep laugh rang out. Zhu Yin and the others felt their faces burning. His eyes had turned red from anger. Mo Yin and the others fell silent, while Fang Yu bowed his head and said nothing. Xin Yuan Xiaohui seemed to have expected this situation, so she didn't show any expression. Compared to these aristocratic children, he was much more mature, because he often encountered such situations where the strong bullied the weak. Zhu Yin and the others thought that they were geniuses, but when they saw the vast world, they realized that they were nothing. Zhu Yin was a little annoyed. He felt that he had disgraced the Heaven Chief realm. Bufang looked at Zhu Yin in surprise. He did not expect Zhu Yin to have such a sense of honor. However, since Bufang now represented the Heaven Chief realm, he could not let Zhu Yin be bullied like this. No matter what, before Realm Lord Dit left, he told him to take good care of these little fellows. Suddenly, a smacking sound rang out. He felt a layer of warm substance on his face, which carried a faint fragrance of beans. What the hell? All the people from the Vajra realm froze, looking incredulously at the white tofu residue on the leader's head. I heard you're going to kill me in the arena? I'm looking forward to it, Bufang said. The burly man wiped his face and looked at the tofu residue on his palm. Suddenly, a terrible aura burst out of his body. His blood and chi rumbled like thunder, like raging waves pounding on a table. This was the Vajra realm's fleshly body cultivation method, and its blood and chi were extremely strong. How dare you hit me with tofu? Green veins popped out on his forehead, and the burly man's eyes were wide open, filled with malevolence. Smack! As soon as he finished speaking, another piece of white tofu hit his head. Even with his cultivation base, he didn't know how the tofu came to him, and he was thrown in the face. The sound of people sucking in their breaths rang out around them. How dare someone from the Heaven Chief realm fight back? He really hit a Vajra realm expert in the face with a piece of tofu. Many people felt incredulous, and there was a look of surprise in their eyes. It should be noted that the Vajra realm was a realm that could not be underestimated. It was a realm that could not be underestimated. Naturally, their contestants were also extraordinary. How could the Heaven Chief realm dare to offend them? You're courting death. Roar. A furious roar rang out. His blood and chi seemed to turn into a column of blood that shot up into the sky. The burly man stared at Bufang, his eyes bloodshot, as if he had rubbed tofu off The ground beneath his feet caved in deeply. Crack! A battle was about to break out. Oh no! A massacre was about to break out. Mo Yin and the others trembled, and their hearts were filled with despair. They cursed inwardly. The great demon was indeed unworthy of his reputation. He dared to provoke the other side. He was courting death. I'm going to tear you, a little reptile from the Heaven Chief realm, to pieces. The man whose face was covered in tofu was so furious that he roared. He stomped his foot, and his figure suddenly burst out. The oppressive aura made the whole room seem as if it was about to explode. Bufong was very calm. Holding a piece of tofu in his hand, he squinted at the burly man. Suddenly, just as Bufong took 2 steps forward, a figure appeared in front of him. A roar suddenly exploded beside the burly man's head. The burly man's face suddenly changed, turning pale. At this moment, the blood and qi in his body also collapsed, and his whole body staggered backward. Outside the corridor, a valiant and beautiful figure slowly walked over. Carrying a sword on her back, she came with a cold face. Go to the square and gather. Don't waste time. If you want to fight, please go to the arena. Yuchi walked out with a heavy sword on her back and said coldly. She glanced at the burly man, her face cold. Who allowed you to attack? Earth Prison Lord. Yuchi. The burly man dared to be presumptuous in front of Bufong and the others. But in front of Yuchi, he was as timid as a dog. She was a big shot who could force a warship to retreat with 1 sword strike. How could the burly man dare to fight Yuchi head-on? It's that kid who hit me with tofu first. The burly man glanced at Bufong and said hatefully, Slap. However, as soon as he said that, Yuchi slapped him in the face. He hit you with tofu, and you hit him back? Do you know what time it is now? It's time to gather in the square and draw lots. If you're late, can you bear the responsibility? Or does the Vajra realm want to be disqualified? Yuchi said. The Vajra realm expert was dumbfounded. What did she mean? He was hit with tofu, and, in the end, it was his fault? Why was the situation so strange? The people around were also dumbfounded. They found Yuchi's logic very unbelievable. The corners of Mo Yin and the others' mouths twitched. They finally understood why Yuchi was protecting Bufong. Mo Yin and Fong Yu glanced at Nethery, who looked cold. They couldn't help but curse inwardly. It turns out that Yu's sister is here. No wonder the great demon suddenly became so tough. In their minds, they were more convinced that the great demon was living off a woman. The burly man from the Vajra realm felt wronged. But they also understood. Yuchi was here to stand up for Xiao Bai from the Heaven Chief realm. They had no chance to get back at her today. However, little lizard from the Heaven Chief realm, I'd like to see if I can still protect you in the arena. The man from the Vajra realm said coldly, then left. The people around looked at Bufong with disdain. He deserves to be the chef from the Heaven Chief realm. He's quite good at living off a woman. Bufong was very calm. Living off a woman? He's just not fighting, but if he goes berserk, even I am afraid. Yuji gave him a deep look, but she didn't say anything. Everyone go to the square. Don't waste time. Hurry. Yuchi shouted coldly, her voice resounding through the entire inn. Then, everyone walked out of the inn and headed for the square. Zhu Yin ran away first. So Bufong walked unhurriedly to the square with Mo Yin, Xin Yuan Xiaohui, and the others. The square of Forbidden Soul City was very large and vast. Because of the preliminaries, the whole square was crowded with people. Bufong could not help but feel a little absent-minded. It's a spectacular scene. Yuchi is at Yu's side, and I don't know what she's talking about. Mo Yin and the others looked at Bufong strangely. The layout of the square was very interesting. There was a huge official road in the middle, and if one kept going, they would enter the circular square, which was set up with 5 arenas. The 5 arenas were located in 5 different positions in the square. It's very lively and spacious, but I feel something is missing. Bufong looked at the crowd, clasped his hands behind his back, and pondered. What was missing? No, nothing is missing, right? Mo Yin and the others looked at Bu Fong in confusion, not understanding what he was thinking about. Yu Qi squinted at Bu Fong. What is this boy up to now? In the distance, Zhu Yin came over with a swollen face and a bloody nose, turning his head away from Bu Fong's face. Bu Fong found it a little funny. Although Zhu Yin was the son of an aristocratic family and had the arrogance that a son of an aristocratic family should have, he had a rare sense of honor. He must have been worried that he would be beaten up by the burly man from the Vajrar realm if he stood up for him, so he turned around and ran away. He's a little cute. Zhu Yin, you'll be the one to draw lots later. Bu Fong glanced at Zhu Yin and said lightly. Zhu Yin turned his head and seemed a little surprised. Then, he said stubbornly, I'm the captain of the team. Of course I'll go. Then what are you going to do? Yu Qi narrowed her eyes. She had a feeling that Bu Fong was up to something. Bu Fong glanced at Yu Qi. Then, he stretched out his hand and drew a circle in front of him. There are a lot of people here, and it's very lively. But I'm lacking something to eat, Bu Fong said. Lacking something to eat. And Mo Yin and the others froze. Then, all of them widened their eyes. Could it be that the great demon is thinking of, that's right, I'm going to open a stall, Bu Fong said. The corner of Xianyuan Xiaohui's mouth twitched. Sure enough, Owner Bu is still Owner Bu. We're here to compete, not to open a stall. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.